This is Jocko Podcast number 204 with Echo Charles and me, Jocko Willink. Good evening, Echo.
Good evening.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as President of the United States and as Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States, I have today awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for Extraordinary Heroism to the Studies and Observations Group Military Assistance Command. The Studies and Observation Group is cited for extraordinary heroism, great combat achievement, and unwavering fidelity while executing unheralded top-secret missions deep behind enemy lines across Southeast Asia. Incorporating volunteers from all branches of the armed forces, and especially U.S. Army Special Forces, SOG's ground, air, and sea units fought officially denied actions which contributed immeasurably to the American war effort in Vietnam. MAC-V-SOG reconnaissance teams, composed of Special Forces soldiers and indigenous personnel, penetrated the enemy's most dangerous redoubts in the jungled Laotian wilderness and the sanctuaries of eastern Cambodia. Pursued by human trackers and even bloodhounds, these small teams outmaneuvered, outfought, and outran their numerically superior foe to uncover key enemy facilities, rescue downed pilots, plant wire traps, mines, and electronic sensors, capture valuable enemy prisoners, ambush convoys, discover and assess targets for B-52 strikes, and inflict casualties, all out of proportion to their own losses. When enemy countermeasures became dangerously effective, SOG operators innovated their own counters, from high-altitude parachuting and unusual explosive devices to tactics as old as the French and Indian War. Fighting alongside their Montagnard, Chinese Nung, Cambodian, and Vietnamese allies, Special Forces-led Hatchet Forces companies and platoons staged daring raids against key enemy facilities in Laos and Cambodia, overran major munitions and supply stockpiles, and blocked enemy highways to choke off the flow of supplies to South Vietnam. SOG's cross-border operations proved an effective economy of force, compelling the North Vietnamese army to divert 50,000 soldiers to rear area security details far from the battlefields of South Vietnam. Supporting these hazardous missions were SOG's own U.S. and South Vietnamese Air Force transport and helicopter squadrons, along with U.S. Air Force forward air controllers and helicopter units of the U.S. Army and U.S. Marine Corps. These courageous aviators often flew through heavy fire to extract SOG operators from seemingly hopeless situations, saving lives by selflessly risking their own. SOG's Vietnamese naval surface forces, instructed and advised by U.S. Navy SEALs, boldly raided North Vietnam's coast and won surface victories against the North Vietnamese Navy, while indigenous agent teams penetrated the very heartland of North Vietnam. Despite casualties that sometimes became universal, SOG's operators never wavered, but fought throughout the war with the same flair, fidelity, and intrepidity that distinguished SOG from its beginning. The Studies and Observation Group's combat prowess, martial skills, and unacknowledged sacrifices saved many American lives and provide a paragon for America's future special operations forces. Signed, the President of the United States, George Walker Bush. And that is the Presidential Unit Citation presented for those that served in MAC-V-SOG, the Studies and Observation Group in Vietnam. And for those of you that don't know what the Presidential Unit Citation is, it's an award that is given to whole units who, and this is the way they describe it, I quote, display gallantry, determination, and esprit de corps that sets them apart from other units. And you have heard about SOG on this podcast before. First from John Stryker Meyer, otherwise known as Tilt. And he was on podcast 180, 181, and 182. And then from his comrade in arms, the late, great hero, Doug the Frenchman Letourneau. And it is an honor for us tonight to have another SOG warrior here. Henry Dick Thompson, codenamed Dynamite, and later known as the Terminator, who served as a SOG 1-1 and as a 1-0, and then continued on with 21 years in the Army, eventually retiring and having a whole nother career as a leadership consultant, author, and speaker. Mr. Thompson. And I know I should probably say Dr. Thompson, because I know you got your PhD as well. If that, in case everything else was enough, sir, welcome to the program. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to it.
So let's start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
South Carolina, a little town called Walhalla, not far from Clemson University. So.
And what year were you born?
1947.
1947. So you kind of grew up in the 50s.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then were you in a military family or anything like that?
My father was World War II and Korea. My mother had 5 brothers, all World War II. One was killed. So I was around it, right from the start, because our family was together a lot, so we had a lot of discussion, about the war and things that were going on, and I was always asking questions, and how do you do this, and how do you do that, and how do you organize? So I was interested, right from the beginning.
And your dad was in World War II and Korea. What was his job in the military? What branch was he in?
He was infantry. So, and he did work with the Rangers for a while in World War II. So.
And so would he debrief you on the types of operations that he did in World War II and Korea?
Some of it. He didn't talk a whole lot about exactly what he did, but he would talk in general about what was going on, about the kinds of operations and things. So,
what theater did you fight in?
He was in Germany most of the time, in that area. So.
Mm-hmm. And how long was he in the Army for?
Army was about 4 years, and then he got out. And then when Korea came along, then they called him back in. And that's really where I started to hear about it, because I was old enough by then to hear people talk about Korea and about the war. And he would write letters home. Mm-hmm. He'd talk about how deep the mud was or how cold it was and things like that. So I was hearing about the war, firsthand then. Mm-hmm. So.
And were you thinking, I'm going in the military?
I was probably 4 or 5 when I started thinking about that. And interestingly enough, I did find my old logbook, because I also got interested in the Rangers. I wanted to be a Ranger when I went in. Mm-hmm. So I found a logbook that I created when, I was about 9 or so when I created it. I had all the members of our Ranger company listed, which was primarily my cousins. But, we had some other people we had recruited in. And we had the journal of things that we did, people who got promoted, people who I court-martialed.
So were you guys doing night raids and stuff?
We spent a lot of time in the woods. I grew up in the woods. When I was 5 years old, when I get a chance, I'd go off in the woods by myself. I'd go play. I'd track animals. I'd listen to the sounds. I'd learn how to move. By the time I was 6, I had an Army pup tent, and I would take up on top of the hill in the woods, put it up, sleep up there by myself that night, take some eggs and stuff with me. I'd build a little fire, cook. As I got a little older and had my BB gun, take out some birds, roast them over the fire. So doing things like that I thought Rangers did. So
you were the 6-year-old Ranger,
yeah,
company commander, getting after it.
Well, the logbook said General Thompson, but yeah.
Hey, that works. And then what about high school? Did you play sports?
Football and track.
What was your athletic capability?
I was better than average on the team. I wasn't, college material, but because I was relatively small, but I could hit really hard. Even my senior year, they even moved me from running back to defensive end, which I was on a line that weighed over 200 pounds, and I was 140. You didn't want to come around my end. My other skill was, I was very fast. So when the quarterback had dropped back, he'd see me in his face because I could get there really quickly. So.
And then, when you graduated high school, did you know you were going to college, or what was your plan?
Yes. Yeah, I started college, and after about a year and a half, Vietnam was going hot and heavy. You saw it on the news every night.
What year did you graduate high school?
65.
Okay, so yeah, I from what I can tell, because I wasn't alive then, but from what I can tell, the Battle of the Ai Drang Valley was in 1965, and that was kind of where the real, hey, we're in combat all the time now. That seems to be the pivot point that's noticeable when you look at it historically.
Well, that was when I think we discovered the North Vietnamese had a real army, and they were very good, much better than anybody thought at the time. And over the next few years, I mean, you could place them probably in the top 4 in the world in terms of armies. Plus, we were fighting in their backyard. They knew the terrain. They knew how to operate there. They didn't stop. They just keep coming. Their biggest disadvantage was they didn't have the technology that we did. They didn't have air superiority, and just a lot of things they didn't have that held them back, or it would have been much worse than it was.
So it's 1965. That's when you said you graduated high school?
Right.
And when you graduate high school, you go to college. Where'd you go to college?
University of South Carolina.
And then you said it was like a year and a half. What'd you end up doing?
Well, I made a decision that what I wanted to do was take a break from school because Vietnam was going on. I felt an obligation, to go do something, do my part. And actually was on my way to the Marine recruiter because that's who you saw on TV every night. But stopped by the Army recruiter who was next door just to see what they had to offer. So I went with the Army. I knew that would give me a chance to do the Rangers if I decided that's what I wanted to do. By then, I was also a chemist. About 13, I developed a passion for chemistry. So in addition to all the outdoor stuff, I set up my own laboratory in the barn at home. I spent all my money on chemicals, and I know you like this, but back in the day, you could go into a pharmacy and buy all kinds of things. I mean, you could buy, nitric acid, and just unbelievable chemicals, you could buy, particularly if you got your mother to sign for you and say, yeah, it's okay to let him have that stuff. And I would stock my lab with it and do all kinds of experiments. I was getting close maybe to a successful brain exchange between birds and frogs. I could get it in there. I just couldn't get them, to start breathing again afterwards. So I have a lot of...
That sounds close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So were you studying chemistry in college?
Yes. Yeah, I went to school on a chemistry scholarship. The intent was to be, get a doctorate in chemistry and be a researcher. But then I decided to take the break, do 3 years in the Army, and then come back and finish the degree.
So is it 1967 now?
Went in 67.
So it's 1967. How strong were the sentiments in America against the war?
Very strong.
In 67?
Very strong.
So that was already there.
Yeah.
What about in South Carolina?
Not as much as some of the other parts of the country, but it was still there. It wasn't something that everyone thought we should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And what about your dad, who had seen combat in World War II and in Korea? How did he feel about you going in?
He supported it. My mother didn't. She wanted me to finish school. I said, I'm just taking a 3-year break. I'll come back, finish the doctorate, and everything will be fine. She said, no, you won't. I said, yes, I will. I'll be back. Unfortunately, when I got in, they started talking about, man, you got to go to airborne school. You need to be airborne. And they said, you need to go to OCS. Yeah, you need to be an officer.
So at what point, so you go to boot camp.
Right.
And is it in boot camp where they're like looking at you going, hey, we need airborne soldiers?
Yeah.
And was that a pretty easy pathway to get to?
Yes. It was. I mean, they ask you day one when you go into the induction center, do you want to volunteer to be airborne? My response was no. That's not what I'm here for. But then once I got into boot camp, I ate that stuff up.
Did you still? So when you went in, what was the predominant part of your brain that was functioning? Was it the, hey, I'm going to do 3 years, serve my country, and look for a job that'll be similar to being a chemist? Or was the primary part of your brain that was functioning was the, I want to be a ranger and go get after it?
It was, when I first entered, first couple of days, it was, 3 years, I'm out, go back to school, be a chemist. I guess it was maybe the first morning. We were in the barracks, and, about 3:30 or 4 o'clock, the lights come on. Somebody starts yelling and screaming and hollering to get out of bed, fall in, get in formation in front of the bunks. And then I hear, we're in double bunks, so I hear them start crashing onto the floor. And I jump out, and I look, and here's this guy smaller than me. And he has a big, Smokey the Bear hat on, a Ranger tab. And I said, wow. And everybody there jumped when that guy said to do something. And I said, oh, okay. I need to start rethinking here.
There's got to be something innate in men. That's just what happens. You see that and you go, yes, I'm in for that.
Yeah, I mean, this guy was impressive, and that brought back all the Ranger stuff, and it started to override the chemistry. So then we get out, we're on the firing range. I was an expert marksman before I ever went in, so I'd max out the marksmanship. I was in good physical condition, so everything they were doing I could do, and I learned it really fast. One night I was on CQ duty. I had to work in the orderly room with the person who was there all night, and I saw this book laying on the table. And it was FM 22-100, Drill and Ceremonies. And I picked it up, and I started looking at it, and I thought, this tells you everything about, right face, left face, when to call the command, all this. I said, it's all written out right here. I mean, if I'd had this book the last couple of weeks, so I read the book that night. I read pretty fast. The next day, I could see the mistakes that the drill sergeants were making. And I made the mistake one time of pointing it out. So, I got to work on my triceps and pecs a little bit as I pushed Fort Gordon a little bit close to the China. But I found this stuff is all written down. You can give me access to it, I'll learn it. And so I was put in charge of my platoon as a platoon guide because, physically, mentally, everything, I was doing great. So I had a good time. And
then you volunteered. Did you have a job designated when you went in? Were you going to be infantry when you went in?
I was going into the chemical corps.
So the chemistry brain was legitimately winning when you went in.
It was for a few days.
And then did you change your specialty to infantry?
Yeah.
You walked in and said, yeah, hey, I know I showed up to be a chemist, but I want to carry a machine gun.
Yeah.
And how hard was it to do that?
Not hard at all, because I was so fired up. I love the things we were doing. And I figured I can do this for 3 years. I can still go back and be a chemist if I want to.
But they let you change. They let you.
Yeah.
They said, okay, cool.
Hey, if you want to change the infantry
During
at
Vietnam,
that time,
it was no problem.
no problem. Anybody that would volunteer for that, I mean, you got it right away.
And then next up, how did you volunteer for airborne school? Same thing?
Yeah, I mean, I had an opportunity to volunteer. Well, after boot camp, you go to, in my case, I went to advanced infantry training.
AIT.
So, yeah, so you know, in there you're volunteering for different things. So I volunteered, you know, for OCS. I volunteered to go to airborne school. So I went to OCS first.
And they sent you to OCS even though you hadn't completed college?
Yes.
And they didn't care?
Not at that time.
They're like, hey, you're smart.
Lieutenants were getting killed so fast. I mean, they couldn't produce lieutenants fast enough. You know, lieutenant had a life expectancy of about a day and a half in Vietnam. So, you know, that was easy to get in. And, you know, I did that. I did, you know, really well in OCS. So it was easy when I said, okay, I want to go to airborne school and I want to go to Special Forces.
So you made that decision as well?
Yeah.
Now, what about going from officers to Special Forces? Was there any challenge in making that happen, or was it still just open, wide open?
They took me right in. Yeah, because, you know, I had done well. I got accepted to that. You know, so I had to.
How
you know,
old
you had
are you
to
at this point?
19, 20.
So you're 19 years old. You have a year and a half of college. You're an officer in the Army, going to Special Forces, airborne, and this is all just tracking you to go to Vietnam.
Yeah, I mean, you're on that track. But go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so airborne school, you know, is airborne school. I went to airborne school. I was lucky enough to have been in the Navy when we still went to Fort Benning, Georgia, and did airborne school. But what about Special Forces school? As you were going through that, what was your impression of what was going on? What was the instruction like? How well was that preparing you, from your perspective, for what you were going to be doing in Vietnam?
I think it didn't prepare me for SOG necessarily. It gave me a lot of the basics. Special Forces is not just about going in and conducting a raid or something like that. It's really about going in and working with the people. We did a lot of training on insurgencies, how governments are overthrown, different things like that. So particularly since I was an officer, I was on the officer track. So we were doing a lot of the bigger picture stuff. Plus, officers get trained in all of the primary skill sets of Special Forces. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're enlisted, coming out of the qualification training, you go to be a weapons specialist or to be a medic or whatever. Mm-hmm. You go into a specialty area. Officers have to be trained in all of them so that you understand what the people are talking about if you're going to lead them. So I enjoyed that, did well in it, volunteered for Ranger School.
And then you went to Ranger School after?
Went to Ranger School after, so a lot of harassment. My Ranger buddy and I, you know, we'd been together forever, so we'd go there.
And was that Bob?
Yeah, that was Bob. And you have to go knock on the door to get in, to report into Ranger School, and you can't knock on the door hard enough. So Bob and I got back and ran into it and just knocked it off the hinges almost, and then reported in. And you know, the instructor that's there, he looked at us, he looked down at the paper, and he told the other guy that was with him, he said, "We've got 2 snake eaters here. We're going to have to keep an eye on them to make sure they don't crap in the street out there or something." And, you know, it went downhill from there, because then it became, Ranger School kind of became a tug of war between SF and the Rangers. Mm-hmm. So every time you did something, if they dropped you for push-ups or something, then you had to do one more for the big Ranger in the sky. So Bob and I would do for the big Ranger in the sky. and 2 for the big SF trooper that looks over the big ranger. Then they'd put us back down again. So, we tried to have as much fun in Ranger School as we could. Because it was tough, and being able to put a little humor in it as you went along.
Now, was Ranger School, in terms of preparation for what you're going to be doing in SOG, a little bit closer?
Yes.
Because now you're doing light infantry.
Well, it's really infantry, but it's patrolling operations, raid, ambushes, those kinds of things that we're doing in SOG. In fact, when I first got to SOG, when I went in with my group, everybody that I arrived with went to what they call the 1-0 school, the SOG team leader school. And I'm standing there and everybody else is walking away. And I said, what about me? And you don't need to go to 1-0 school. You're a ranger. Mm-hmm. You're going to a team. So tomorrow you'll be on a team.
So at what point did you hear about SOG?
You heard rumors. When you're at SF at Fort Bragg, every once in a while somebody would mention the term SOG. And you'd say, what is that? Mm-hmm. What do they do? Oh, man, it's top secret. Nobody can tell you what it is, but they really do some really cool missions. I mean, that's the elite, but nobody can tell you, what they really do.
So you how much all this schooling must have taken 2 years for you to get through all this schooling?
It's a year and a half at this point, probably.
Year and a half, and when you get done with Ranger School, do you finally check into a Special Forces group?
No, we were in. There was a little interim there before Ranger School. So we were already assigned to an A team, to a B team. I was already targeted toward Africa and actually in mission preparation to deploy to Africa for a mission that we were going on there. But I had volunteered I had put in the paperwork to go to Vietnam. So right after Ranger School, that came through.
And you went to all these schools with your friend Bob?
Yeah.
How did you know him? Where did you guys meet?
We met in advanced infantry training right off the bat. So, I mean, it was unreal. Every school, we had the same interests. So, I mean, we went to every school together, the whole time.
Where was he from?
California.
Okay. But you guys just hit it off.
Yeah.
You guys both had the same motivations.
I had that same mindset. We're going to do it.
So then so you get your orders changed, and was that hard to do? Again, I mean,
if there's a choice in the military, if there's a choice between sending someone to Africa or sending them to Vietnam, at that time Vietnam was going to win. It always won out.
So as long as you wanted to take the hardest jobs and do the toughest things, it was pretty easy to get that path opened up for yourself. Yeah. The Army will accommodate you.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's head over to Vietnam. When you show up there, I remember Tilt saying they kind of showed up in Vietnam and they said, "Hey, who wants to volunteer now for SOG?" Is that what happened to you, or did you already volunteer and know where you were going?
I knew I was going to Special Forces. I knew I'd get a Special Forces assignment. And then when we got there was a guy who was already there working in a mic force, but he was there in the train. And so we linked up with him. We went to a bar that night, and he kind of updated us on things that were going on. And one of the things he said was, tomorrow, toward the end of the day, one of the last things they're going to do is they're going to ask you if you want to volunteer for SOG. And he said, whatever you do, don't do it. Just tell them no. They'll say thank you, and you move on to your Special Forces assignment. So the next day, toward the end of the day, Bob and I are sitting in the office waiting to go in to see Colonel Jones or whatever, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'll make my decision. You have to make yours. This is not a joint decision on this thing, So I went in, and he asked me about SOG, told me just a little bit, and then said, if you want to do that, you have to sign a bunch of papers here. You volunteering for 6 months, basically go anywhere, do anything. And he said, you got to understand, I'm saying anything. So, okay. And then, you have to sign this other thing. You can't tell anybody for 20 years, what you do, stuff like that. So I volunteered. He sent me out the back door and brought Bob in the other door. I went back over to the little bar to meet up with our friend. And when I came walking in, he said, you did it. I can see it on your face. Said, you are a dead man walking. I told you not to do that. And, when Bob showed up, it was the same way. You could say, I knew he was going to do it. But, yeah.
So now you two, so that was the attitude, was the casualty rate was so high in SOG that when someone volunteered for it was like they were a dead man walking.
Yeah. I mean, the chances of survival, if you ended up on a team, now if you went to, a staff position, it's a little different, but if you were on a team, you knew a minimum you're going to get wounded.
Did you knew that? Obviously, is this what the guy that was telling you don't go to SOG? He said don't go to SOG because you're going to get wounded or you're going to get killed.
Mm-hmm.
That's guaranteed.
And most likely you're going to get killed. He said the highest casualty rate in Vietnam is there.Ose guys don't survive. I'm not sure exactly what they do, but they don't survive. So
you got one note in the notes you gave me. It just says blackbirds.
So we had to fly from Nha Trang up to Da Nang the next day, because if you're going to SOG, you had to go to Da Nang. So when we go to the airfield, they take us to a restricted area of the airfield. And the C-130s and 123s that came into that part of the airfield were black. And he said, wow, that's a little different than everything else. And you get on the aircraft, there's no seats. There's seat belts on the floor. So the plane is gutted except for the front end, and there's a line up there that says, do not go beyond this line, classified area. So something was happening in the front of those planes that we were not allowed to go see. So we sat on the floor, and, we fly up there, and we get off. Escort picks us up, and he says, there'll be a bus here to pick you up in a few minutes to take you over to CCN. And so this school bus-like thing shows up that's black. The windows are shot out. There must have been 200 bullet holes in the bus. And, we're looking at the bus thinking, oh, geez, what have we gotten into? The guy driving the bus, he said, we'll leave in a few minutes. We're picking up a team here today, too. And what happened to the bus? And he said, well, there's a pass that we have to go through. And we get ambushed there sometimes. So the main thing for you two to remember is, if the stuff starts, you get on the floor of the bus and do whatever the team tells you. They'll take care of everything. You just do what they tell you if you want to live. And we think, man, this is not looking good. I mean, we might not even get there. So, but we did, and we got there. So.
What was the team? Did you guys pick up a team?
No. When we first got there, it was late afternoon, so okay. They assigned us to a bunk and told us that we would get briefed the next morning on what we were going to do, and told us just, get something to eat in the mess hall, relax. There'd be a movie showing that night, and we're thinking, a movie? So they had constructed some kind of like bleachers at this little open area, nailed up a few sheets of plywood, and had a movie projector, and they would get movies from somewhere, and they would show a movie out there. So we went, let's go watch the movie. And behind that screen was Marble Mountain, which juts up out of the sand 450 feet, just out of nowhere. This thing is jutting up there. And there's two peaks. Each peak up there has a combat outpost on it, because if the bad guys, got up there, they could shoot right down into the compound. So we're watching the movie, and all of a sudden, red and green tracers are going everywhere. I mean, they're just crisscrossing. Bob and I are starting to hit the ground, and everybody else just watching the movie. And I asked one guy, "What's going on?" And he said, "Don't worry about it. That happens every night." And he said, "Every night they try to get the guys off the combat outpost, and they put on a little light show up there. It'll be fine. They don't shoot down here because they're getting shot at. They shoot back at those people." Wow. Well, that's interesting.
So then what happens? You when everyone else got sent to 1-0 school, did Bob get sent to 1-0 school, or is he the same as you?
Well, before that, the next morning we got our briefing. We went into the headquarters, into the briefing room, and the colonel came in and said, "Okay, let me tell you what SOG's about. Let me tell you what you're going to be doing." And he uncovered some maps on the wall and started talking about the kinds of missions that we would be going on, and that we would be put on teams and we'd be leading those missions. And he kind of explained that we had three major areas. You had the northern area, which was CCN there, but the forward operational base was up in Fubai. And so he explained where the different camps were. And then after that, he told me I'd be going to FOB 1 up north. Bob would be going down to Central, down around Khartoum. So we went our different ways at that point.
When he started briefing you on what the missions consisted of, did you have any? Was your guess anywhere close to that? Did you have any idea and say, yeah, that's probably what I thought we would be doing? Was it close?
I had heard rumors that maybe they operated outside of Vietnam. So it didn't surprise me that much when he started talking about the countries we were going to actually go into. The kinds of missions didn't surprise me too much. I mean, a few of them did, but for the most part, it was, wow, this is pretty cool. It's crazy, but it's pretty cool.
Did he talk to you at all about casualty rates or anything?
No.
All right, so then what happens? You get assigned?
So I went to FOB 1 at Fubai with a group of other people, and when we got there, they grabbed everybody but me and said, you guys are going to 1-0 school, so a week-long course to teach them how to be a leader, small team in the jungle. There were a few things that they probably got that I hadn't done already, but not much. So I was assigned, or told I'd be assigned to a team the next morning. Told me to go report over to the supply room. They had a mission for me first that I needed to do. So when I got there, they told me that we had some casualties and that their personal effects had to be inventoried, by an officer before they could be sent home. So he said, their duffel bags are in there. If you just dump them out, go through them, look for anything that might be classified, a map or anything like that. If there's any correspondence in there, read it. Make sure it doesn't say anything about any of the missions. If there are pictures, get all the pictures out. So pretty well, sterilize their gear. So the first bag I picked up, when I read the name, I thought, wow, I know him. So this was a guy that, we had run around with some at Bragg, so I already knew him. And he came over, about a month before me, and now I'm inventorying his stuff. So kind of got my attention. So, wow, the casualty rate, probably is pretty high here. But then the next day, I was, assigned to a team as the 1-1, the assistant team leader. Mm-hmm. And, we started mission prep to get ready to go out. And
who was the team leader?
Sergeant Deck.
So it's very cool that even though you were an officer, you were going to be second in command.
No one was going to walk into a team, regardless of your rank, and just, say, I'm here and I'm the team leader. You had to, regardless of your rank, you had to go out as an assistant or lower and learn how to lead a team, learn what's going on out there, and eventually get checked off by the team leader. He would, like Sergeant Deck, had to say, okay, Thompson can lead a team now. And that put me on the list to take over the next team, that was available.
So what did the team consist of?
Myself, and Sergeant Deck, myself, and another American, and then we had probably 9 indigenous members on the team.
And who were the first indig? What kind of indig crew was the first crew? Were they Vietnamese?
Vietnamese.
Okay. And then did you go through any training protocol to be ready for your first mission, or what
with the
did
team?
You guys do?
I mean, we started training right away once I was assigned. Deck grabbed me up and started talking to me. This is what you got to do. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's where we're going. What we're going to do. We took the team out. We started doing immediate action drills, and in preparation for what we were going to do on the mission.
How long did you guys have to train before you guys rolled out on your first mission?
It was probably 8 to 10 days before we actually went out. So I had a little time to get to know the team better, to learn all the drills and the way they did things.
What was the level of English speaking for your indig troops?
Very good for the interpreter, and the others, they understood some words, the common words that you would use, get down, stop, things like that. That you used all the time, but I mean, you couldn't carry on a conversation. So.
And how good was your level of focus during this time? I imagine you must have been just as focused as a human being could get.
Yeah, I mean, this is real. So, totally focused. There was nothing else on my mind. In fact, we had a little theater there at Fubai. Had a little top on it, so if it rained, we didn't get wet. But some old benches we were sitting on, a piece of plywood. The movie was on, so I went to a movie after a couple of days. They had one. I went to the movie that evening, and I'm sitting here, and I hear this loud pow, and the guy next to me falls off on the ground, and I'm thinking, because we're sitting outside, we just have a little top on. And he falls over on the ground, hitting the shoulder. Wow. Doesn't matter where you are.
That puts a downer on movie night.
Yeah, I wasn't that much into movie night.
All right, so now what's the first mission that you guys get assigned?
They were doing some testing, among other things, in addition to just sending us on a mission. They were trying to figure out what was the best time to put a team on the ground. Should you put them in right at first light, so when you get off the aircraft, you can move out and head to wherever you're going to go. You're getting away from the LZ quickly, because the bad guys would figure out that you had been inserted, and they'd come out and start looking for you. Or was the best way to do it, go in at last light, so it's dark. You get off the LZ, you set up in your remain overnight position, and then head out at first light. So if the NVA or trackers are coming after you, then they were having to do it in the dark. So our team had been selected to be a last light insertion to see how that worked. And I had already been briefed on some things like we go in high, we go in 3,000 feet or so when we're flying to the LZ to avoid the small orange fire coming up at us. And then when you get out there to the LZ, he's going to bank the aircraft on the side, and he's going to put it in auto rotate, and it's just going to fall out of the sky in a spiral until he gets to where he wants to make his short final coming into the LZ, and then he'll put the power back on and slow it down, and we'll come in. I was not quite prepared for that. I mean, I understood the concept of what he was saying, but I didn't realize that when he put that thing in auto rotate, I wasn't going to be sitting on anything. And I was on the side that it was turned toward, so I'm just hanging out there in the air, holding onto the side of the aircraft, looking down 3,000 feet and saying, this is not good. My stomach's up in my throat, and it's like a thrill ride at the fair or something, and this thing is falling. And I'm just trying to hang on and stay in there. So we spiral on down, we come around, and we're coming in on a short final. It's on a ridge line, and they had dropped what was called a daisy cutter, 2,000-pound bomb, to blow a hole in the canopy big enough that we could set the helicopter down in. And we're coming in, we're flying over a little pond on the ridge line, and I'm climbing out on the skid of the helicopter myself, and the other American, the team leaders on the other side. So we're climbing out on the skid, and I'm thinking, man, we're going really slow, and I'm just a sitting target. They could just knock me off of this thing anytime. This is not good. So we come up, and we had to literally go straight down into the bomb crater. So the pilot's trying not to clip trees as we're setting down. It's just getting dark. And we're going in, and myself and the other guy are on the skid, and we're close enough, and he slowed down enough. I said, okay, this is it. We're going to have to jump on, down into the bomb crater. I bent my knees to jump, and just as I did, I saw this guy pop up on my right about 10 feet, kind of off to the side with an AK-47. And just instantly, instead of jumping, I jumped back up on the edge of the helicopter. Just as I jump up, he opens up with the AK, and the bullets come right across where my legs were, but now I moved, and they hit, the other American on the other side of me, hit him in the legs. So he starts to fall. So I'm grabbing the back of his harness with my left hand, and I put a half a magazine in the guy, that's right there. I hosed him down, and I managed to jerk, the other guy up onto the floor of the helicopter, and then I could turn and put I could just see muzzle flashes right in front of me, so I put the other half of the magazine there. So now I'm empty, and when you'd go in, you would have gunships who would come in alongside you. So in case something happened. So we're in a full-fledged ambush now all the way around us. 2 Cobra gunships open up with their miniguns, 4,000 rounds a minute coming in, looking like 2 hose pipes just spraying red water all around us. And what a lot of people don't realize is bullets don't just hit the ground and go on the ground. They ricochet. They bounce all over the place. And if there are trees there, they're hitting trees. They're going around. So I'm trying to pull him back up inside the helicopter. I've got the door gunner on my side, full blast. The Cobra's coming in, and they're also shooting 40-millimeter grenades at 250 a minute. So we've got that going on. I got 2 team members behind me using me for cover. So I've got a muzzle on each side of my head right here, and I'm getting powder burns, from the muzzle flashes coming out of that. I got hot brash coming from them, coming from the door gunner, going all over me. The floor is now covered with blood squirting out of his legs, and my magazine's empty. So I'm trying to get the magazine out of my pouch that I've got it in, and one of the things I talk about in the stress book is that when your stress level gets really high, you lose your fine motor coordination. Things that you can do very easily when you're not stressed just don't work for you anymore. So I'm having trouble getting the magazine out of the pouch to start with. I finally get it out, and then I can't get it in the weapon. And I'm sitting there, and I'm just seeing hundreds and hundreds of bullets and tracers coming, green tracers crisscrossing inside the aircraft. And
so green tracers crisscrossing inside the aircraft.
They're shooting.
Let me just explain to everybody that doesn't know what that means. That's insane. That means that enemy bullets in Vietnam, the Americans used red tracers, and the enemy used green tracers. And unfortunately, it's not really like that anymore. Everybody uses red tracers, and that was what it was like for us in Iraq. And then I had some guys hit me up and said it's the same thing in Afghanistan. Very rarely would they see green tracers. But for enemy tracers to be crisscrossing inside of your helicopter, and this was a Huey, right?
Yeah.
This is not a small. This is not a big aircraft. This is a tiny aircraft.
Yeah. I mean,
you're packed in there. So for rounds to be crisscrossing inside that thing, green tracers, that is completely insane.
I was thinking that myself. This a little voice in the back of my head is saying, yeah, this is crazy. Not only that, but I am not happy. I mean, this is my first mission, and I'm going to die on my first. I mean, what kind of deal is this? I came over here to do something. So that little voice is going on back there, and the other one's saying,
this is like 15 seconds into your first mission.
Yeah. I mean, it's right there. Ricochets are going all over the place from the Cobras and things, and the other guy's rolling around screaming, holding his leg, and the blood's squirting around, and you're also hearing this metallic clang, just clang, clang, with the bullets hitting the helicopter. And, you're thinking, too, if this thing's going to go down, we're going to end up in this bomb crater right there. So all of that's going on. I finally managed to get the other magazine, in, so then I can start to shoot at, the muzzle flashes that I'm seeing. And, the second time I go to reload, I was a little better with that one. Got it in there a little faster. The aircraft's starting to really vibrate now because he's trying to lift up, out of that little hole in the canopy. So I'm thinking at least we're trying to start up, but this stuff is still coming. It's still hitting us. You've got the, Cobras making more raids. And now what's also happening, I can't really see it, but the A-1 Sky Raiders that are out there on station with us, they give us some protection. They're starting to drop 500-pound bombs just a little ways from us because those little thatched roof huts that I saw out there as we were spiraling in turned out to have tanks underneath them. So they had just put that thatched stuff around and make them look like a little hooch, but really it was tanks. So when the tanks started moving, the Sky Raiders went after them, and so you got all the bombing and strafing of those guys going on. You got the gunships hitting shooting all around us. We're trying to come out, and eventually we managed to get up out of that hole. The fire just shifted, now the tracers are going up. But as we pulled away from it, then that fire stopped because now the Cobra was really opened up, on the ambush site. And I look across at Sergeant Deck sitting over on the other side. And he looks at me with a big grin on his face and giving me a thumbs up. And I'm thinking, oh, what is wrong with this guy? So, he was so excited. He thought that was the coolest thing. And I'm thinking, man, I almost died. This was my first time. I experienced a level of fear that I didn't know existed. I had tried to imagine a lot about, what's it like? When people start shooting at you, of course you're going to be a little anxious. So what is it going to be? I had no clue. I couldn't even imagine a level of fear like that. But, fortunately, I was able to control that part of the fear. I could still shoot. Mm-hmm. So it didn't stop me from returning fire and doing what I needed to do. But, man, it scared me. Having those two weapons right next to my head, my high frequency hearing was steadily going away permanently, getting burned, with the muzzle flashes coming out of there. Killed my first two people for sure, the guy down below and the first guy I shot at in the tree because I saw him come out. I know I took those two out, and I hit several others. Saved the first American's life because if he had fallen in the crater, he'd have been gone. A second later, we'd have both jumped in that crater, and we'd have both been gone.
That's bad tactics on their part, right? They should have held for another 2 seconds,
they
and they would have had you on
jump.
the ground, and they would have still been able to possibly damage the helicopter. And
Yeah. So, earned my combat infantryman's badge.
Yeah, you did.
Just I had a whole series of firsts that occurred right there, and survived that. And a couple of minutes later, I'm thinking, man, we got out of that. And I looked down, and here comes a stream of tracers coming up out of a 51 caliber or something. They were trying to hit the helicopter. They were, ways from us. But still, I think it's not over yet. I mean, we got to get out of here and get back. And I told the door gunner, I said, we got to go straight to the hospital. We got to drop this guy off. He's got to have medical attention right away. So we did that. We dropped him off. Then we went back to the launch site to drop the team off. But and I asked Sergeant Deck, I said, I'm just curious, how many magazines did you fire when we were back there? And he said, I emptied 5. I had the 6 put in. Mm-hmm. I was getting ready to start on that. I threw 2 fragmentation grenades and a smoke grenade. And then he said, Lieutenant, you need to practice so you get faster reloading when people are shooting at you, or you're going to die. I said, okay, I'll practice.
Yeah, because when you talk about the fine motor skills disappearing, but if you practice them all the time, you'll be able to maintain them.
To some degree.
Yeah, they won't be as good, but they'll be better.
Yeah, because it's and that's part of the problem with training. You train to get a good sight picture, sight alignment, and all that. And you squeeze the trigger and hit your target that's not shooting back at you, and then you get in a firefight like that, and your stress level skyrockets. And when it does, you can't see the sights on the weapon. Mm-hmm. I mean, you train to use those sights, and now all of a sudden your vision changes as the stress goes up. You can't focus on the sights, so you can't do it the way you trained. You can't reload the way you trained. You trained to turn sideways and shoot, and all of a sudden, when all the stuff is coming at you, your brain takes over and says, "Face the enemy." And your body's going to turn you toward the enemy. So you got to train to shoot at the enemy. You got to train to shoot without aiming, so to speak. Now, I had been through a pretty extensive course on something that we call quick kill, mm-hmm. where we trained to shoot from the hip. And we started with BB guns and shot at little miniature silhouettes on a 2x4, mm-hmm. shooting from the hip with a BB gun until you could knock them all down. And then we started throwing disc up in, 3-inch disc up in the air, and you shoot with a BB gun until you could hit that moving disc. And then the disc would get smaller and smaller, and then we would go onto a course where the targets popped up, and it was live fire in terms of, you were using your weapon and shoot from the hip and, get so you could hit all the targets. So we practiced a lot. And with the teams that I had, I just drilled it in their head. You've got to be able to shoot without aiming. Mm-hmm. You don't have time to bring up and try to look through a sight. It's happening too fast. You'll be dead before you can get it up there. So there are a lot of techniques that I had brought in that I had learned before I got there, and then kind of developed across time, and always trained the teams. Do this. Do it like this. This quick. One of the NCOs had told me one night at Fubai, he said, "You can't hesitate. There's no hesitation. You got to understand, Lieutenant, where you're going, everybody is the enemy. You don't have to worry about shooting a friendly by mistake. They're all enemy. And the person that shoots first has the highest probability of surviving. Pull the trigger and never, ever shoot anybody less than 3 or 4 times. And if he still moves, you shoot him 3 or 4 more times. There's no one shot and move to the next guy. You make sure they go down. So that was kind of the strategy I adopted and practiced to be able to do that. And I can go from the safety position on the selector switch to fully automatic faster than most people can pull the trigger with the safety already off. I used to practice that. I used to practice it going down. I also discovered that with an AK-47, as soon as they start to shoot at you, the barrel rises. Mm-hmm. If they don't hit you with that first or second round, if you can get down, you got a chance to survive. Mm-hmm. And I used to practice shooting on the way down, put silhouettes out, hit them all before I hit the ground as I'm going down. I'd empty that magazine. So anyway, that's kind of getting off track here.
No, that's actually right on track. So you come back from this first mission. What are you thinking now? You got to be thinking to yourself, there's no possible way I'm living through this.
Well, actually, the way my mind works, I was critiquing. What should we have done? What should we have trained on beforehand? Mm-hmm. What did we do there? Were we prepared for an ambush like that? Was there anything else we could have done? So I was playing, through our preparation, playing in my mind through what we actually did. What could we do differently next time? So in my mind, you got to get better every time. Mm-hmm. Every time you do something, you need to be better than the last time that you did it. You need to understand you're going to always have to adapt. Whatever you plan, you're going to have to adapt. War is just, it's not predictable. Mm-hmm. The predictability is that it's going to change. Yeah. And you've got to be able to do that and do it on the fly.
Yeah. I was telling you, I just had a guy on the podcast, hasn't come out yet, but I had a guy that he was a Marine. He went into Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, and Tinian. Got wounded in Tarawa, got shot while he was still 500 meters from the beach, trying to get across that hell that they were walking through. But we had that discussion around, always thinking it's like nothing will happen to me. And I always use the example of I always think if I'm on a commercial airplane and it crashes, I'm going to live. I'm going to figure out a way, and I'll get into a good free fall position, and I'll scan and find a pool somewhere or whatever. Was there any of that? Because it seems to me like that kind of operation right there, you got to look at that and say, even if you have the attitude of it'll happen to someone else, when you've got green tracer coming through your aircraft, that might change even my mind and start thinking, okay, probably not gonna make it through this.
Yeah, you think that, and I've used up more lives than a cat during that time period.
You used up 9 lives that night.
I never thought that I would.
In those 2 minutes.
Yeah, I never thought I'd see my 21st or 22nd birthday. Thought there's no way. You just can't get there from here. Not with what I'm doing.
Go. You got to a point where you said, okay, I'm probably not going to make it.
Yeah, there's a good chance.
That's the way it is.
But my attitude is, I'm going to take as many of you with me as I can. You might get me, but you're going to pay for it. I'll be really upset if you knock me off with the first round and I don't get a chance to get some of you. But you better do it quick, because I'm going to take as many as I can with me, because I'm coming. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay, so you guys get back from that mission. You guys do a good debrief. You're going through all the points of what you thought you could do better. You're wondering who was the person that came up with the idea of doing these night inserts, and maybe if last light inserts aren't the best. I don't know, because that's another thing. You don't really know.
Yeah, you don't.
It seems to me like if you drop a daisy cutter, and the enemy at least says themselves, well, they dropped the daisy cutter. They must have done that for a reason. Yeah. Let's go surround it.
I mean, why would you drop a 2,000 pound bomb out here on a ridgeline and not do anything else, unless you're coming?
Yeah.
Unless you're going to come in.
At least drop 15 of them.
Yeah.
To make the enemy have to spread out a little bit. Not put their entire force surrounding the one crater.
Yeah, it was. There were a lot of things like that I thought about. Once I got back, I was making a list. Unfortunately, I shared some of my lists with the commander of the camp, because he was excited and telling me, "I told you we could get you out. If we put you out there, we're going to get you out. You saw how it worked, right?" And I said, "I saw how it worked." let me share some thoughts with you. Unfortunately, I probably had talked to Mr. Jack Daniels too much before I had that conversation, and I shared a little too much of my thoughts. He wasn't exactly, happy with some of the things I had to say, because it reflected on him too. But I still think they were right.
Yeah.
You put one, like you said, daisy cutter out there. Why don't we put up a flag for everybody to say, "Hey, they're coming here soon."
All right. So then, what's the next mission looking like?
Let's see. Then I think the next one we actually got to spend the night. So we did a lot of planning. And at this point, Sergeant Deck's starting to listen. I've got more credibility now. I've been shot at, and we did okay. So we put a lot more planning into it, a lot more rehearsal into it, and went in, got on the ground, uneventful. And when you would get on the ground, you would move 100 meters or so into the jungle. You would stop, set up a security perimeter, and then you adapt. You listen. Do you hear any bad guys? What do you hear? You got to adapt to the sounds of the jungle because the last 45 minutes, an hour, all you've heard is this whop, whop, whop of the helicopter. And, so you've had a temporary threshold shift in your hearing. You can't hear as good. You can't smell as good because you've been smelling the JP4 and the helicopter all the way out there. So you have that security halt, and you adapt to the sounds. What's out there? What do you hear? What do you see? In my case, I was very fortunate that I had spider senses, so to speak. I didn't quite have spider hearing after that first little episode, but I still have the rest of it. I mean, I could smell you. In more than one case, I sniffed out an ambush. I could smell them. I could smell their body odor. I could smell what they had to eat. I knew they were up in front of us. I could just feel things like that. So we had that. We sent in Team OK. We had a code word that we just transmit that meant, one of them meant Team OK, moving north, moving whatever direction.
Was this a daytime, early first light insertion, or was this last light?
Late afternoon,
Okay.
But yeah, it wasn't a last light thing again. So we had time to move for a ways, and then eventually stop for the night. And typically what we would do is do, like we call it, a fish hook. You'd move along a little ways, and then you would make a turn, and you would come back down 50 meters or so. So if someone was tracking you, you'd hear them go by because they're following your trail. And I would put, very quickly, I learned to put out what we call toe poppers. It was a little small anti-personnel mine, plastic, and I had C4 in it. And it would take your leg off, or most of your leg if you stepped on it. And I had a lot of experience in the woods. I know how people are going to track you. I know where they're going to walk. I know where they're going to step. And particularly if there's a log for someone to have to go across, they'll always step right on the other side of it. And that's where I'd put it. I'd put it right where they're going to step, and I'd cover it back up. And sometimes I'd put my foot, just a light footprint on top of it. And then if they came, you'd hear that thing go off, and you knew you got one. And he was probably going to die. He'd bleed to death because they didn't have a hospital or anything out there. So you had him. And if he was just leading a larger group, typically they would open fire. They didn't know where you were. They'd just start spraying the woods. But, you're way back here. They're up in front of you now. So that gives you a chance to decide if you're going to move out or not. So anyway, we set up. And the jungle just swallows you as it starts to get dark. It just closes in all around you. And if you're under double canopy jungle, it gets dark fast. If you're under triple, it's pretty dark during the daytime, but at night, you can't see anything. It's just totally dark. And I was thinking, as it was getting dark, at first I thought, I'm a little nervous because I can't see, even though I had just, had tremendous night vision, like an owl, but I couldn't see. And then I thought, they can't see either. And the difference is, between us and them is we're not moving. They have to move without making any noise. And if they make any noise, we know where they are. We know they're out there. So And what I did was I created, for me, a 4D bubble around me. So I would just start with whatever direction I was facing, and then what's out there. What sounds do I hear? What bugs do I hear? What noises do I hear? And I'd take the next quadrant until I'd gone all the way around. So I knew the sounds in all 4 quadrants. And then I would raise it up, because up above you, I mean, you got birds, you got monkeys, you got different things that are happening in the trees, different sounds up there. And you incorporate all this together. And now you're used to a particular level of noise in each one of these quadrants. And then the sound of silence was the trigger. I developed, to where I could actually wake up. If any quadrant went quiet, it would wake me up. If anybody moves in one of those quadrants, the bugs in that area will stop chirping. Mm-hmm. They'll just get quiet all of a sudden. And if they get quiet, something's out there. And that alerts you to, where they're coming from. And it might be a tiger, it might be, some other large animal, but something just stopped them, scared them. So I decided, the dark's my friend. They can't see me. And I've got area weapons out there, claymores. I can set off the claymore. They see a big ball of fire, and I take out a bunch of people. But they don't know where I am. Mm-hmm. And then, the next level of the frag grenades, you throw a grenade, big ball of fire, a lot of fragments, but they don't know where it came from. So they still don't see you. As long as you don't pull the trigger on the weapon, they don't know where you are. Mm-hmm. So I decided this is pretty cool when it gets dark. Because I'll find you if you're out there.
How long would it take when you guys would settle into a perimeter? How long would it take for the noise, the silence that you had created, to escalate again to normal jungle levels? Within
30 minutes or so. Once everybody's down, mm-hmm. and the rule was, once you're down, you're down. You do not move again until morning, because anybody moving is a bad guy. Mm-hmm. And we would all position ourselves so that, I could reach Echo over here, or the guy on the next side of me, mm-hmm. to wake him up or alert him something was happening. And Echo's arm's so big I can't really do this, but if I could have your arm, if you want to wake somebody up without terrifying them, grab them right there and just slowly squeeze. Mm-hmm. And if you just slowly squeeze like that, what you'll see is their eyes start to open up, and they just come to. And, and we trained to do that, so people knew if you get squeezed, you open your eyes. That's the only thing you move. Start listening. What do you hear? And it might be your turn to be on guard, mm-hmm. or it might be there's an enemy out there.
Bro, that's crazy. I just got chicken skin from that. Bro, I can only imagine. Like, you feel that, you're like, oh, that's crazy, man.
How long would you guys do? 50% security and 50% sleeping, or would you guys do less than that because you didn't really need it?
Yeah, sometimes we drop down to 30%. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I know teams that everybody goes to sleep, mm-hmm. but not with me. I'm not going there. Somebody's going to be awake, and we hear them. And sometimes you had to sleep. You wouldn't sleep on top of the ridge. You had to get off on the side, and you try to get into a thicket. You try to get into a steep area. So you learn to sleep straddle trees. So you straddle it so you won't slide on down the hill at night. It's a little uncomfortable at first. You got to get set up right, but once you do, you can sleep like that. Keep your arms through your rucksack, because you wanted your rucksack to go with you if you had to leave in a hurry. Your load-bearing equipment never came off. The weapon was always fastened to you with a cord that went through a snap link on the shoulder, your load-bearing gear. You'd have it laying across your lap. So, you could put your hands on it real easy and turn it and shoot it if you had to. You had your knife where you could access that, easily, quietly, in case you needed it. So, and then nobody moved.
And then that first overnight mission that you did, what was the purpose of the operation?
We were going to find this relatively small battalion-size element. And
there's how many of you guys?
This mission is probably 7.
So there's 7 of you looking for 500 enemy North Vietnamese regulars.
One of the things I think, I know it sounds a little crazy. One of the things you have
sounds a lot crazy.
One of the things you have to understand about a SOG team is SOG teams were small, but they carried a really big stick. Given the stick might be 30 minutes away before you could use it, and sometimes an hour, but man, you had a big stick because if you engaged the enemy, as soon as you transmitted the word prairie fire over the radio, everything flying within range of that team was diverted. Everything. Any aircraft that had ordnance on it, any mission that was going on was set aside. It all came to you. It was unbelievable. I mean, I had a mission one time where I had 14 Cobras in orbit waiting on their turn to come in because I had to bring them in between the L4s that were coming in and the Sky Raiders that would come. They were all, I mean, it was just unreal, what would show up once you got in trouble.
Yeah, I guess that is the security blanket. Although, bad weather.
Then you're in trouble.
Nighttime?
You could do some at nighttime, but we didn't have the night vision. The aircraft didn't have the technology that they have today, so nighttime was a problem for them. You could do something called combat sky spots, where the L4s could come in and drop 500-pound bombs, but they were doing it based on radar. So you had to start them like 2,500, 3,000 meters away and bring them in because you didn't know where they were going to land. They would be somewhere, in that circle, but you had to let something hit and then start to work it. So, yeah, the nighttime, could be a problem.
Yeah. You got a book here. You mentioned it really quickly. It's called The Stress Effect, and it's about leadership and decision making. But you have some stories in it that are worth talking about. I want to read one of them right now. So it says, for almost 2 years, I'd been training to lead a special operations team into combat. During those 2 years, I'd successfully completed U.S. Army Ranger School, Special Forces training, become a member of the most elite military force in the world. When I got to base camp in Vietnam, 1968, I erected a 6-foot-tall 2x4 board in the dirt and wrapped hemp rope around the top 8 inches of the board to provide a striking surface. Every day in camp, I pounded the striking pad with my fists and my feet, continuing to improve my accuracy and power. I had been trained in Ranger and Special Forces hand-to-hand combat and had earned a black belt in the Korean martial art of Taekwondo. I'd become an expert with all special operations weapons as well. I quickly found myself. So you had some introduction to martial arts, and they were teaching you guys some striking capability. Did you guys learn any grappling at all?
Yeah, I mean, you did that in Special Forces and in Ranger School. You did, the military version of a hand-to-hand. But I had trained in, Taekwondo when I was in college. I broke my hand one night in a little pub, and I thought, there's got to be a better...
You broke your hand on a pub? Or
no.
You broke your hand on a pub attendee?
There was an attendee that ran into my hand and broke it, and I was thinking, there's got to be a better way than this. I've seen these guys jumping around doing kung fu or whatever on movies. So I found this Taekwondo place, right off campus there, and I went in and I said, I need to toughen up a little bit. I'm tired of getting hurt. So, yeah.
Right on. Back to the book. I quickly found myself deep inside enemy territory, leading my elite team of 3 Americans and 4 mercenaries on a classified mission. Every human within 100 miles was the enemy. The temperature was 110 degrees. The humidity was 100%. The salt from our own perspiration constantly burned our eyes. Mosquitoes swarmed. Each of us carried 35 to 40 pounds of ammunition, grenades, and water on our load-bearing harness and a 75-pound rucksack on our back. No one wore an armored vest or a helmet because these would add too much extra weight and would be too hot. We were operating under triple canopy jungle that allowed very little light to come through and no air movement. It rained every day. Everything was wet. The bushes in the ground were covered with small leeches that began to move up and down frantically when they sensed our body heat, thinking they would have a meal soon. They attached themselves to us without our noticing them. The next day we would find them on our faces, chests, arms, and legs filled with blood and being the size of our thumbs. The physical and mental stress was very high. This type of mission required complete silence, no talking for days, just hand and arm signals or notes. There could be absolutely no noise while moving. We were traveling along at a snail's pace of 100 yards an hour. Every step and every foot placement were pre-planned. Toe down first, then slowly the heel. This technique was designed to muffle the noise of any small branches that might be broken if we accidentally placed our weight on them. Each team member had an area of responsibility for maintaining vigilance as we moved. We were always looking for booby traps, ambushes, enemy personnel, poisonous snakes, and tigers. We couldn't forget the 500-pound hungry tigers. We knew a North Vietnamese Army force was very close to us. We just didn't know exactly where. We spent most of the day moving up to the top of a ridge, one step at a time without making a sound. Just as we neared the top, the point man signaled to us to halt and get down. He could hear a large group of enemy soldiers just over the ridge. Our hearts began to race and adrenaline spiked. Our 7-man team was about to come face to face with over 180 trained North Vietnamese Army soldiers. Our stress levels soared and our attention became focused. We knew everything could literally explode at any second. The closest help was an hour away. We could make no mistakes and we could not be discovered. I moved forward into a position to observe the enemy soldiers who were less than 40 yards down the other side of the ridge from our location. They appeared to have finished eating and were getting ready to move up the ridge towards our location. I signaled the team that we needed to move quickly. Although the ground was muddy, slippery, and steep, we tried to move as quickly and quietly as possible. It was going to be very difficult to avoid contact with them, and contact would be deadly. I was about 20 feet behind the point man, moving deliberately, tightly gripping the handle of my Car-15 machine gun with my right hand while using my left hand to steady myself by grabbing bushes as I moved. It started to rain hard, making it even more difficult to get us help if we were discovered. We could hear the enemy talking on the other side of the ridge. Then, out of nowhere, I was hit so hard from the high side of the ridge that my weapon was knocked out of my hand and my feet left the ground, and I was falling backward down the side of the steep ridge. Instinctively, I grabbed my attacker as I fell and took him with me. My stress level was so high that all my hand-to-hand combat training automatically kicked in. As I tumbled down the incline in the rain and mud, I literally ripped my attacker limb from limb, biting, pulling, and breaking any part I could get my hands on. I used every deadly move I knew and actually heard the sounds of bones breaking. Although the entire event lasted only a few seconds, it appeared to pass in slow motion. A stream of thoughts and questions went through my mind. Where did this guy come from? How did I miss seeing him? Does he have a knife? How can I get my knife? Is he alone? Will he call his comrades before I can silence him? Then it was over as quickly as it began. We were wedged hard against a large tree that stopped our tumble down the ridge. The impact momentarily knocked the breath out of me. The attacker was not moving. Apparently, I was the winner. All my hand-to-hand combat training had paid off. Looking up the ridge, I saw some of my team members looking down at me with sheer horror and shock on their faces. It must have been almost as terrifying for them as it was for me, I thought. Everyone's life hung in the balance, but I had won the fight. Mano a mano. I had saved the team. As I began to untangle myself from my attacker, the world suddenly came back into focus. Now I had the same horror and shock on my face as my team members did. I had just used all my expert hand-to-hand combat techniques on a banana tree. In that part of the world, worms eat around the bottom of the banana trees, which weakens them and causes them to fall without warning. I was lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time and be blindsided by a falling banana tree. Fortunately, Two components to this event ultimately saved us. First, I was hit so hard and unexpectedly that my weapon was knocked out of my hand, preventing me from firing at the tree and giving away our position. Second, it was raining so hard that the enemy soldiers did not notice the commotion. We completed our mission and returned to Vietnam unharmed, except for my ego. I have heard, however, that banana trees in that part of the world still tremble at the mention of my name. Good times.
A little embarrassing, but yeah, the stress level was so high. It just, you're locked, loaded, you're ready to go, and something triggers you, and you go for it. You react. It's just the instinct. Somebody had me, and it was me or him, and I just unleashed everything I still had. Until I killed a banana tree. But, I can walk by one today, even in other countries, and they tremble.
They know.
They know.
The legend is real.
Yeah. You can see the little limbs turn and watch me to make sure I go on by.
Yeah. It is amazing, the point of you telling that story, talking about stress. And I one thing that I noticed about it is when we are anticipating something, oftentimes we will see what we are anticipating.
Yeah.
So when we are predicting enemy combat, then that's what we're going to see. And you have another great vignette in here about a shooting that took place in New York. And it was, a guy that was standing in the stoop of a doorway, and the police officers see him, and he looked kind of suspicious. And eventually, when he moved, they said, oh, he's trying to run from us. So now they draw their weapons, and the next thing he does is reach into his pocket. They start shooting, and once one person starts shooting, they all start shooting, and they end up putting 40-plus rounds into the guy and into the surround guy, because they didn't shoot very accurately. But it turns out that the guy was just a normal citizen that fit the description of a person that had conducted some crimes in the area. But it wasn't like a specific description. I think it was like I was a black guy in this neighborhood. Oh, looks pretty close. But what they anticipated seeing and what they got kind of mentally ready for, and then he makes a move to get away from them. In their mind, he's making a move to get away from them. In his mind, he's just trying to get out of the way. Who knows what these cops are doing, but they can't be after me. And then the next thing is they're yelling at him, oh, I better get them some ID. So he reaches into his pocket. What do they think he's reaching for? They're anticipating he's reaching for a weapon, so they kill him. So that's a great lesson learned. And, you talk a lot in the book, The Stress Effect, about, you call it awareness, being aware of what's going on. I always use the word detachment, being detached from all the chaos and emotion, and what a great power it is to have that. It's the same word or different word, same meaning, the awareness that you talk about. But that example right there, what you're anticipating, there's a good chance that what you're anticipating you're going to see regardless of what reality is.
Yeah, it's not a banana tree. That's a North Vietnamese soldier, highly trained and skilled, and he's trying to take me out.
Yeah.
And doing a good job because I'm falling backwards. I can't shoot him. And, in the story you're talking about, as they approach him and start shooting, the first two guys that get there, one starts shooting, and what happens is some of the bullets are hitting on different parts of the stoop there and start to ricochet back.
That's right.
In their mind, he's shooting at him. I mean, the bullets are coming back at him. They think he's shooting. The other guy with him trips on the steps and falls. So his partner thinks, man, they hit him. Mm-hmm. He's down. The other two are up there. They think he's down. And, they all just continue to shoot an innocent guy. Mm-hmm. So we see what we're expecting. We have to be careful with that. And it happens, it happens all the time. Yeah. When the adrenaline starts flowing, you're going to do a lot of things that you need to keep it under control. Mm-hmm. In their ways. Part of it, I'm probably getting off track here, but some of it is practice. go through the immediate action drills. You keep doing it and doing it and doing it. One of the things I used to make my guys practice that they really didn't like was when we were going on a mission, because you're going to be out there for so long, the 1-0 carried a medical kit, so I'd have a medical kit with me. Everyone there carried, it came in a can back then, just a little can about that big around. Mm-hmm. You had it taped on the back of your web gear. It had a bag of ringer solution in it, a blood expander. Mm-hmm. You know, because when you get hit, most of the time what you die of from a gunshot wound is you bleed to death. Mm-hmm. You can't get the blood, stopped in time. So we all carried a bag of ringer solution, so you could get an IV right there on the spot. Mm-hmm. Well, my thinking was, especially after that first incident when I having trouble getting the magazine in the weapon, I don't want one of my guys trying to put that needle in my arm in that condition, and he's jabbing all over my arm, and I'm laying there bleeding to death. I need the blood. So I said, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to have a little practice. So I had been over to the dispensary, and I had gotten some needles, and I brought them over, and I said, we're going to practice putting the needle in each other. Mm-hmm. So that if we're getting shot at, you've done it before. It won't be the first time that you've tried to put a needle in the vein. They did not like that. The guys, okay, now swap partners. Yeah. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. And every so often we would go through that drill. Let's practice. Let's practice opening a can. You don't want to have never tried to open that can before. When somebody's shooting at you and your buddy is bleeding to death, you have to have been through the whole process. Let's do it.
Well, these lessons that you learned that you passed on, I mean, everything from, getting on the ground and patrolling 100 meters and then waiting, that's what we were trying. Now, I will say that once you got night vision, things are different because you didn't need to wait a half an hour to let your night vision adjust. You could go. But, we used to do the same thing. We used to give each other IVs with red lens flashlights at night underneath a poncho because that's what you're going to have to do. And so those are the kind of things that you have to train. You have to train. And people that think that horrible thought that creeps into your mind that, well, when the time arises, I'll know what to do. That is not the truth right there. I got a quick question for you. How did you get the name Dynamite? Was that your nickname? Did they assign that to you? Because I'm surprised at this point your nickname wasn't Banana Tree.
Fortunately, you got your code name on day one. So after we got the briefing, the name, and then we had to select a code name. I wanted Ranger. Ranger was already taken, so they said, "Here are some others," and I saw Dynamite, and I said, I really do like to blow things up. So I'm small, and Dynamite probably works for me. I mean, I blew my neighbor's windows out when I was a teenager one time with a rocket that exploded on my launch pad. I didn't intend for that to happen, but I was always blowing things up. So, and then when I was there in Southeast Asia, I blew things up all the time. I blew bridges up. I blew up all kinds of things, and I always carried a lot of demo with me. So.
Good nickname. And that was your call sign too. Was that your call sign when you were in the field? It would be my call sign if I was wounded or something like that. Got it.
But call signs that we use were always 3-letter groups.
Okay. Got it. All right. You mentioned in your notes here that you gave me an op where you guys got hit with gas.
Yeah. That was...
that had to be unexpected.
That was still with Deck's team. We had planned and rehearsed for everything. And we went in. It wasn't a hot LZ, or didn't appear to be. We didn't draw any fire going in. We got off the aircraft. The aircraft, took off. We're on the ground, and all of a sudden, we couldn't see. You couldn't breathe. This stuff is coming across the LZ, and, we were coughing and gagging because we didn't have masks with us. Masks were like helmets and flak jackets. That's extra weight you got to carry. And unless we were intending to use gas, we didn't carry it because it was just very, very rare that the NVA would use gas.
Yeah.
And in this case, we're on the LZ. Here comes the gas. We're not prepared for it. We had to call, for the aircraft to come back and get us out. It creates a real problem for pilots. If they don't have masks, and now all of a sudden they're getting all of the gas coming in, it's hard for them to see the instrument panel to be able to fly. But they came back in and they got us out. But it wasn't a pleasant experience, and it was one of those things we didn't plan for it. Because it was such a rarity, and we just didn't do it.
I was surprised. We went through a gear list with Tilt, and they always carried a gas mask. And of course, because they always carried a gas mask, you know how many times they came across it? I think the number was 0.
Yeah.
Murphy's Law.
Yeah. A lot of times we would carry gas canister. We'd carry a regular, like a
CS grenade.
CS grenade, but we'd also carry the CS rounds for the M49, the 40 millimeter, so we could shoot those. But if we carried CS or the grenades, then we carried the mask too. But it was the masks were because we were going to use them, and if you use gas, you better have a mask, or you're going to be as bad off as the other guys goes. Yeah. Without fail, the wind's going to change, and it's going to come right back on you, and you're in trouble.
Murphy's Law. You got another note in here about a mission. It says tree roots.
This was my last mission with RT Alabama with Deck, and we had gone up. We made the little fish hook. We came back. It was early afternoon, and we were going to take a break for a little while. So we had put out the claymores. I had put a toe popper out, and there were some strange trees in that area. I'm still not sure what they're called, but they almost looked like rockets with fins. The roots kind of came out. I mean, it kind of, they grow up the tree maybe 2 feet or so, and they'd come out like fins all the way around. So we were taking a break, so I thought, I'll just lay down between, these roots, and you won't be able to see me because I'm kind of down in there, and that's where I'll take my break. And then we hear the toe popper go off. I heard that loud scream, and as soon as the toe popper went off, it's just this barrage of AK-47 fire coming. Some of it, in our direction, some of it in other directions. They didn't know exactly where we were. But in that first barrage coming through, I had 3 AK rounds come through the root on my left side. Right across my shirt, I had just exhaled, and through the root on the other side. If I had just inhaled, it would have taken the top of my chest off when it came by. So it just grazed me, coming across. And I said, I probably should get out of here. Because the roots are not providing any, actual cover for me, just a little concealment. So I jumped around behind a tree, and, we set off the claymores, had a full-fledged firefight going on. Eventually had to work gunships and things and get extracted. But one of the things that I also did was got another taste of the impact of adrenaline, because when I came out from behind a tree, I had taken my arms out of the straps on the rucksack. So I had to grab it with my hand, and I grabbed it with my left hand, and it weighed probably 75 pounds. But I'm not a big guy, but I'm tossing that 75-pound rucksack around like it's a pillow, and it's going to go with me as we fight our way, down the ridge and toward the LZ. But I paid for it, later on, after we got extracted, to realize I had pulled muscles in my shoulders, because the muscles wasn't designed to handle that much weight. But I had so much adrenaline pumping through my system then. That plays with it.
So as soon as you guys get contacted, as soon as those rounds start coming, you're calling prairie fire emergency.
Prairie fire. Yeah.
And then how long is it taking before aircraft show up on station?
usually you'll have something within 30 minutes that you might be able to work, a gunship or something like that. But for the extraction ships, it might be an hour, depending, on how far in there you are. And it might be longer than that. But if you had bad weather, nobody's coming because they can't find you.
How good was the weather prediction at that time? If you guys were you guys able to look out in a day and say like, hey, there's going to be storms moving through here tomorrow?
We at the different CNCs, we had our own Air Force meteorologist that tracked the weather, gave weather briefings, 2 or 3 times a day, to the command group. The teams would get them. We would get them before we would go out, so that we would know kind of what to expect. And we didn't launch unless the weather looked like it was going to be good, for the insertion, because you didn't want to get out there and all of a sudden you couldn't use the assets that you had with you. So, but still, it's kind of like today. The best weather predictions that are made are the ones the day after. We can tell you what probably happened yesterday, or at least with a high probability of what happened yesterday. But the weather change, it's where we were up north most of the time, it was a rainforest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's going to rain every day.
So it's going to rain.
Yeah, every day it's going to rain. And the clouds would roll right down on top of the mountain and just totally conceal the ridge lines. So not only are you under triple canopy jungle a lot, now you've got a cloud cover over it. Mm. I mean, up above that, they can see fine, but they can't see where you are. They can't, you can fire the flares out. They won't see them because they're in the clouds. So.
Is it always the 1-0 that's carrying the radio and talking to the aircraft, or who usually was doing that for you? I know that Tilt said he did it. He would be like, "Yep, I'm going to talk to the aircraft."
Most of the time, I carried the radio. I mean, you had a guy. Mm-hmm. One of the 3 Americans was supposed to be carrying the radio. Usually the 1-2, if you had a 1-2. But I carried mine almost all the time. But even if I didn't carry it, I wanted to talk. So bring it over here. I want to tell them, what I need to have done. So, that gave me another 25 pounds plus, depending on how many batteries I carried, more weight to go in my rucksack. And that's if we used, the PRC 25 or 77. But I think Tilt mentioned at one point, we had a commander take over CCN who said, "You're going to carry the KY-38, secure radio," which, the PRC 77 was about 25 pounds, and then it had to connect into the KY-38, which was the same square,
size.
but thicker, and they had to fasten together. So some people would stack them on a rucksack, one under the other. Uh-huh. Most people were wearing the 77 in the back and the 38 in the front to help you balance, going up and down the hills and the mud.
It's a good theory.
But, to me, and my experience said, the more you can look like an empty pair of fatigues laying on the ground, the greater your chance of survival when somebody's shooting at you. So the more stuff you put on your chest or around your waist that raises you up in the air, makes you more of a... I mean, I get my rucksack shot up all the time. I mean, I'd be laying there and bullets are just zinging through the rucksack because it was sticking up, above me. But when you put that KY-38 on your chest, that pushes your body up another 6 inches in the air. So now the chances of you getting hit instead of the rucksack go up. So I didn't like to carry it. I only used it a few times. I mean, it had a pretty high malfunction rate.
Yeah.
And then...
Because it's not just on you. You got to make sure that the aircraft that you're trying to talk to is running their encryption device.
Everybody
right?
has to have that same encryption, which is an interesting story we may get to a little later about that. But, yeah, it was a pain. But I wanted to talk on the radio.
And you guys didn't. I know Tilt. They didn't carry like a belt-fed machine gun in their elements. I think he said they never did, which to me was surprising because, like, you talk to the Vietnam SEAL platoons and even my SEAL platoons in Iraq, we carried as many belt-fed machine guns as we could. Like, we wanted to have massive firepower, but I guess for you guys, the jungle, the weight, it was too much.
My team carried an M60 machine gun. M60s are heavy.
They are heavy indeed.
My team carried one time because I thought it would be cool. I carried the machine gun because I thought, man, the firepower I'll have with this thing, I can show those guys on the other side there what war is all about. And we made contact, and I opened up with that baby, and I learned a lesson really quickly. And it made sense, when it happened, because we always teach, you got to take the machine gun out.
Yeah.
Shift your fire to wherever that machine gun is. Take that joker out.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. And all of a sudden, everybody's shooting at
all of a
me
sudden you were
on
the
the
most
other
popular.
side.
You were the most popular
thinking,
target out
whoa.
there.
This stuff is just coming in on me, and it's just eating everything up. And I'm getting behind a tree and keeping my head around. I'm shooting the machine gun around the side of the tree, but I can't, really see what I'm doing. But I couldn't take my head around there; they'd take it all. And so after that mission, that's enough of that. I'm not carrying one again. Now, when we if we put two teams together to make what we call a spike team, where we were going in with the intent of engaging the enemy and not running, then we would carry, two M60s at least. And then, when you carry an M60, everybody on the team has to carry M60 ammo. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got at least 100-round belt with them, plus the machine gun is carrying all that extra weight. So, it doesn't just weight down the machine gun. It's everybody on the team now is still going to carry all those 40-millimeter grenades with them for the M79. You still got to carry that. You still got to carry your extra claymores. You got to carry all your mission equipment. And now I'm giving you another 15, 20 pounds of machine gun ammo to carry along with you. There's only 5 or 6 of you. The weight just goes up so fast that we didn't do it.
Yeah, and I guess now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, the fact that you guys were generally in closed terrain, pretty tight. It wasn't like you needed massive cover fire to cover ground you didn't have to fire and maneuver because you take 3 steps and all of a sudden the enemy can't see you anymore.
Yeah.
So that makes a little bit of sense too. What was your op tempo like? We're talking about these missions. How often were you guys going out?
Yeah, that's an interesting story, and that it varied by team, and in the 12 months that I was there, I went out 18 times, which was way beyond what an officer led team would do. I don't know that the other teams were going out that frequently, in that shorter period. Mm-hmm. The paper that you signed when you joined SOG said, I volunteer to go anywhere, do anything for 6 months or 6 missions, whichever comes first.
Got it.
At the end of the 6 missions or the 6 months, I've got to say I volunteer to do it some more. So you had this, little safety valve in there to give you a chance to kind of wake up and say, this is not a smart thing to do. and here's my ticket to do something different.
Right. Well, that's sort of like the bombers in World War II that had to do 25 missions over Europe, and if they did 25, then they could go and do something else, go home.
Right.
Most of them didn't make it. But yeah, that's pretty telling when they say that you only have to complete 6 missions. That doesn't sound like a big deal. You must be thinking to yourself, if they only want me to do 6 of these things, they got to be pretty hairy.
If I only have to go out 6 times in 6 months, I've got a good deal. The grunts are going out there every day and fighting, or doing something or being exposed. And so you had that. And remember that a SOG mission really is an out-of-country mission, as Tilt says, across the fence. You go into another country. When you see the casualties, the KIAs of SOG, at least in the beginning, they all said South Vietnam. That's not where they were killed. So you were going out, but in between those missions, you might do something in country. Like Lynn Black, one of Tilt's big buddies, they were on the same team and stuff for a while. Lynn was, just a unbelievable 1-0, and he and I, kind of became friends. And in between missions, we would do things like, why don't we take some of our guys tonight and let's go over the Marble Mountains, set up an ambush. I guarantee you we'll catch somebody. And let's go do that. What about tomorrow afternoon? You want to take some of our guys? Let's go search some of the caves in Marble Mountain. Those jokers are in there. We just have to find them. So we would do a lot of things like that, just for fun, so to speak. Because compared to a regular mission, I mean, this is a no-brainer. You just go over there and you shoot some people. You catch them in the cave and hose them down.
Compared to 40 miles deep into Cambodia alone.
And when we can be back in time for lunch. I mean, let's go do this. So, and then you had Marble Mountain, the 2 combat outposts. Teams would rotate up there. You had to keep 2 teams up there all the time. So in between missions, you might go up there for a week or 2 weeks at a time, and then come back down and start mission prep, for another mission to go back out. So it wasn't like you were just sitting around in between missions. You were always doing something. Plus you were doing a lot of training and preparation for the next mission that you had coming up. So you stayed pretty busy.
How long would it take you to brief a mission when you were going on?
We might start with the initial briefing as a day. Briefing, this is what we're going to go to do, is where we're going to go do it. And depending on what the mission was, I might say, okay, so we're going to go over to a place that was called Monkey Mountain. We're going over to Monkey Mountain because it's a good place over there for us to rehearse the actual mission, the raid, the ambush, whatever it was we were going to do. We can go over there and get in some, realistic rehearsals. So we might go spend a few days over there just doing that. And while we're there, we rehearse our RON procedures, putting on the claymores, where did we put them. I would put the team in a different place every night so that you had to, let's look at the terrain we're in now. What's the most likely approaches? What do we need to defend the claymores? Where do we put the toe poppers? What's our avenue of egress? How do we get out of here? If they come at us from this direction or this direction, where do we go? And where are the closest LZs that we're going to go to, and how do we get there? Everybody needs to know that. Whether you're American or Indig, you got to know where it is. You got to know how to get there. And so we would do the training like that, but particularly mission specific for what we're coming up on. And then as you got closer, you get much more specific, and then when you got to the launch site, you would have the mission briefing where your air assets would be there. So the pilots who were going to fly your insertion, the gunship pilots, Air Force representative for the A-1Es that were going to be there, the F-4s that were going to be there. So you would have the big briefing there, and everybody would agree on everything and make sure you had all the call signs and everything down, and contingency actions. The covey, I haven't said anything about him. We'd always have a covey out there with a forward air controller that we could talk to and could look down and tell us what he was seeing. Might be able to see the bad guys coming to us or whatever. He could get more assets for us. So it was a big deal. I mean, because you might have 4 gunships, 2 to 4 A-1E Sky Raiders, 2 to 4 F-4s. You've got covey. You've got the insertion ships that you're going in with. You've got trailing ships in case those get shot down that are flying empty, so they can drop down and pick you up. Sometimes you might have a ship with the medics in it because expecting casualties. You know, so it could be a big air show sometimes going in. But and if you're going to North Vietnam, you had to have the F4s. I mean, it was just required for the mission.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the others, Laos, Cambodia, you could go without the F4s and you just use the A-1 Sky Raiders. But if you're going North Vietnam, you better have the F4s with you because they could send a MiG down there after you if they wanted to. So you had to worry about air cover as well as hitting big targets. And F4, it can get your attention real fast. And the Sky Raiders, do too because they fly low, slow, and they're carrying their own weight and ordnance. Mm-hmm. And they can put it right next to you. You tell them where you want it, that 20 millimeters hitting 10 feet over there and right along beside you or whatever the ordnance they're carrying. You can get your attention. I mean, those jokers are good.
All right. So how many missions did you do with RT Alabama?
4.
And then after that, did you get the up check from deck to become a 1-0?
Yeah. So I had gotten that. I mean, I had it before we did the 4, but we knew that FOB1 was going to close down. And when it closed down, the teams were going to get scattered around. So I knew I would get a team, but I would get one somewhere else. So we just stayed together, for those 4 missions. And then when I moved to Da Nang, to CCN, then I took over RT Michigan. And RT Michigan was the one that had, I don't remember who the 1-0 had been on that one, but Eldon Bargewell was the 1-1 on that one. So I took over that, and the guys.
And he was an enlisted guy at the time.
He was Spec 4, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he was already a legend.
Well, he already had
a good reputation.
So we got along well because I had asked about him because I didn't.
Right.
He was a different camp. I didn't know about him. So I had asked about him, and everybody I talked to said, "Man, this guy is good." He
was asking everyone else about you too.
He was asking about me, and he told me, and I said, "Well, what did they tell you?" And he said, "Well, I talked to, Sergeant Johns, and it was impressive because he said, and I had total faith in him. He said, Thompson is the only lieutenant I've ever met that you could give a map and compass to, and he could tell you where he was. And he could navigate you to any place you wanted to go. And he said, you just don't find lieutenants like that. Mm-hmm. So Bargewell said that was good enough for him if I knew where we were.
Yeah.
So,
isn't it surprising that would be a skill that's so needed? And that people didn't actually have it sometimes. It's crazy. Yeah. And these days, kids are relying on the GPS.
Yeah.
And they forget about some of those land nav skills. And it always cracked me up because they're to a point where they really rely on the GPS. They don't know their pace count. And, I'd be walking on a training operation, and say, okay, just not even thinking about looking at a GPS because I did a map study and know where we're at. And those younger guys, they just don't have this. Not all of them, of course. We still get some guys that are great at it, but it's just a different time. So you take over this new team. You got Barswell, which I'm sure you heard me talking about it with Tilt, but he was when I was a young officer. I just got picked up for commission, and I went to Germany, and he was the guy in charge over there. And my boss, who was an outstanding guy, who was a great mentor to me, but he would kind of tell me, about the old man. He'd say, Barswell said this and Barswell said that, so that was pretty neat for me to make this connection. And here you are sitting here that actually he was your 1-1.
Yeah, and he was very knowledgeable, very good. And I was impressed with him right from the beginning. And I thought, I mean, this guy's good.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went out on an operation, he was just cool and calm. When the shooting started, I mean, he was good. But I mean, he had experience. I mean, he was at Quezon with the team there, the Siege of Quezon. I mean, he was there. I mean, where they just got hammered for several weeks there. He was there with that Special Forces detachment. He had recruited some of the team members that we had, and this was a yard team. Mm-hmm. They all liked him. They all had a lot of respect for him. And he was a smart guy. I just never thought then, where he would end up. I figured, if he doesn't get killed, he's probably going to be somebody at some point. But I didn't expect to see him. I don't know. I guess it was in the late 70s. I saw him at Fort Bragg. No, I guess it was in the 80s. I saw him at Fort Bragg, and he was a captain. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, how can you be a captain? I'm a major.
Yeah.
You were a Spec 4 the last time I saw you, and now you're a captain. And I thought that was great. So we hung out a little bit. He was in Delta. Uh-huh. So we chatted about, Delta Force and all that kind of stuff. And, had some good times while we were there together at Bragg. And then I guess, the next time I actually saw him, he was a major. And he was at going through the Command and General Staff College. And I'm thinking, I'm about to get promoted, but I'm still a major too. How's this guy doing this? And then the next thing, he's a lieutenant colonel, and then he's a full colonel, and ends up a major general. And he's just constantly going. And everybody kept telling me, get out of Special Forces. Special Forces is a kiss of death for an officer. You stay in Special Forces, you're not going anywhere. Well, he did. Yeah. I mean, not only did he did great on that tour with SOG, he did a second tour. He ended up not just being in Delta, he came back and commanded Delta Force, and then overall special operations and all this kind of stuff. I mean, just unbelievable. So.
Did you notice any qualities? I mean, you said you looked at him and you were like, oh yeah, this guy will do well if he lives. Yeah. Was there any qualities that stand out? If you're a young enlisted guy in the Army right now or in any branch, and you say to yourself, I want to be a good soldier. Is there anything that you noticed about him that you would give as like guidance to a young trooper out there?
He's mission focused. You tell him this is what you need to do or where you need to go. I mean, he's going to make it happen. Cool, calm. He was a smart guy. I mean, he didn't brag about it. When you talk to him, just very humble. But you could tell, I mean, he's smart. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's thinking about what you're saying and what he comes out with, and when he makes recommendations and talks about things, you need to be listening because he's thought this stuff through. No fear from a combat perspective. I mean, if the bad guys are coming, he's going to take them out. Mm-hmm. And demonstrated that, on several occasions with me. Demonstrated it later on. I think he got hit the next mission after he was with me. But he had put on an AK-47 vest. So
got shot in the
chest.
magazine or something.
Yeah, it went in the magazine. He poked through enough to make a little hole in him, but it didn't go all the way through. But and then he, on another mission, he got shot a couple more times, and another mission, he B-40 rocket hit the team. Everybody was wounded. He had a piece of shrapnel go in through his cheek and kind of lodge over behind his eye. So he's bleeding like a stuck pig, and the bad guys are coming, and he takes out 20 of them because he's got an RPD, the Soviet kind of a light machine gun, and he just taking people out right and left, with everybody wounded, including him. But that's what he did. Yeah. The only general on record that for a personal firearm carried an AK-47. An AK-47. I mean, he's walking around as a general officer, and instead of having that little pop gun on his hip, he's got an AK-47 slung over his shoulder, and he's telling his aides and bodyguards, hey, if we get in trouble, you don't worry about me. He said, you guys take care of yourself. I'll take care of me. And it's just unreal. So, but
outstanding.
Anyway, but we spent a lot of time up on a marble mountain together, with the rotation and stuff. So we spent time there. So we'd have those little fights most nights. The bad guys trying to come up and get us. The snipers would shoot at us just before dark. There was one cave opening that was almost on our level, I don't know, 50 meters away from us, that if they worked their way up to that opening, they could shoot just about into us at night. I've got videos of that cave, and you can see how the marble is just chipped off all around the opening of that cave where we were shooting at them at night, when they're up in there and stuff. So we did a lot of stuff together. It was a good relationship.
So one of the things you got in here in your notes is you guys did a mission, RT Michigan, and you guys inserted into the Laotian border with the 101st Airborne. It sounded like a pretty good trick, kind of a.
It was kind of a when they told us what they wanted us to do, I thought, this sounds like Ranger School. This is exactly a scenario in Ranger School.
What'd they tell you they wanted you to
do? This was going to be a walk-in mission. So we would start on the Vietnam side of the border, and we would walk over into Laos to to the area they wanted us to go to. And they wanted us to do that from a position where the 101st was currently located. So there was a battalion from the 101st that was set up right on the border. And so they coordinated to have our team put on steel pots, all that kind of stuff, get on the resupply helicopters. We came in with a resupply like we were, new troops coming to be there. And we jumped off, and then they put us inside the perimeter, but in a section, and said, do you need to dig in? And all the little guys are looking around saying, what? You need to dig a hole, foxhole, to get in a fighting position. And the response was, we don't dig. So I told him, you need to dig. I mean, we're out here with people that got bullets going everywhere. You need to dig in. So it was a good thing we did, because it got a little hairy, that night, and it was nice to be able to get down in a hole. And then I met with the company commander and platoon leaders and their forward observer, and I gave them our plan. Here's what we're going to do. But what shocked them was I said, okay, these coordinates, I want you to pre-plan that as an artillery target, and here's the name of it. And I want one here and here and here, and these are the names. All I'm going to do is call that name out. Target Roger. I'm not going to give you coordinates. You got to have that already planned. And when I say Roger, I expect the artillery. I'd never had artillery before, so this was great. We were never in range of artillery, and all of a sudden I got it. I planned that stuff all over the place. Yeah. And so what we did the next morning was, at first light, we went down to the stream with the water resupply team. They'd go down and fill all the canteens and things up and bring them up. So we went down with them, dressed like the 101st, and when we got down there, we changed into our Batman suits and gave them the helmets and flak jackets and all that stuff. And they threw them in bags and carried them back up. And we just, went on across the river and to the jungle there on our mission. So hoping that the bad guys thought, nobody had come in that way. So went out on our mission. There was a hatchet force platoon that had been inserted, much further out in the valley. But we went in, and it was just different and a cool way to do something. And then when we got in contact, when I called for those targets, they put it right on them. So that was a cool thing. It was interesting that we had Bargewell and the 1-2 that was on the team with us. We had a little disagreement about our exact location.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling those two, no, I'm telling you, we are right here. And they said, no, you're 200 meters off. I said, there's no way. So anyway, we had in contact, and I had told them, I said, if we're where I am, or where I'm saying we are,
mm-hmm.
there's a fork in the stream, and there's a little footbridge going across one. Right out there, about 150 meters in front of us, is a road, and there's a stream out there. I said, I'll take you down there. But then we made contact, and we had to come out on strings. So when they were lifting...
Was that your first time coming out on strings?
No.
No.
I'd been out before.
Okay.
So they were picking us up, and they couldn't see me because they were in front of me, but I'm pointing down.
There it is.
We're right there.
You're
right
getting ready to get shot, but you're like, hey, I was right.
That's
there
right.
it is.
That's right. Yeah. Those are, 10-digit grid coordinates, and they were right on,
So when you were you just using pace count and
use the pace count and use terrain?
Yeah.
I'd spent a lot of time in the woods growing up, mm-hmm. so and particularly in the dark. I love the dark. I can feel the change in the terrain. I know if I'm going uphill, downhill, if I'm on a little side, whatever. So I would take the section of the map that I thought we were going to operate in, and I just memorize it.
Did you guys have 1 to 50,000 maps, or were they 1 to 24?
Yeah, they were. Well, we had both, but depending on the distance that we were going to go.
Uh-huh.
But I could just, usually we didn't go very far, so you can memorize, if you're used to doing that, the section of the map. I could see it in my mind, when we were moving. I knew where we were, I knew what the pace counts were, I knew what the terrain should look like, where we were. I had checkpoints set up that if we're here, we'll see this. If we're here, we'll see this. And, so I could track it, plus I used the pace count. So I knew where I was out there, and that was one thing that I thought was critical, because eventually you're going to have to call for help, and you need to be able to tell them where you are. And under triple canopy jungle, you're not shooting azimuths to hilltops and things like that. You got to know where you are on the ground, because you know the topology, what it feels like, what it looks like, and how far you've gone. And that was just a skill set that I had.
No more important piece of information on the battlefield than where you are. If you don't know where you are, it doesn't matter where the enemy is, because you can't call for fire, you can't maneuver on them, because you don't know where you are. When you guys were you guys just getting overwhelmed? Is that why you guys had to come out on strings on that one?
Yeah.
How big was the enemy force, do you think, that you rolled into? In your notes here, you said lots. It says lots of NVA.
I typically use the term lots, meaning 100 or more. So
how did you guys stumble across them?
I'm sorry.
Where'd the contact come from? Like, what did that contact start like?
It really started because headquarters decided they needed to resupply us because they wanted us to stay longer. And I was saying, no, don't bring a helicopter out here and hover over our position. Don't do that. Yeah, you got to get resupplied. And they did it anyway. So, once you have a chopper hovering above the canopy there, dropping stuff down through it, the bad guys, they're all over the place anyway. They thought, there must be somebody down there. If nothing else, they're going to go get whatever fell out of the helicopter. And they did. They came down there, and there we were. So it kind of, messed up the afternoon in terms of what we'd planned to do, but we got out. But it's an extraction on strings through, double canopy jungle. It's rough because you're being dragged through the limbs of the trees, through the treetops. The aircraft will always start to go forward, and then you're being drugged through them. And
they want to get the hell out of the line of fire, right?
Yeah, because they're getting shot at. They don't want to stay there long. You're getting shot at, and it's hard for you to shoot because you're twisting and turning and hitting leaves, and now they're behind you, and it's hard to shoot that way. And they're only going to take maybe 4 people at a time out anyway. Mm-hmm. So that means you got another chopper coming in. The bad guys know you're going out on strings now, and you got another aircraft coming in to pick up the rest of the team. I'm the team leader. Yeah. I'm always first one on the ground, mm-hmm. the last one on the ground. Mm-hmm. So I'm coming out with that last aircraft. I'm the last one, to come up off the ground. And, they've got you pretty well zeroed in by then, even though, you're starting to work some gunships and stuff. But, and the pilots don't like staying there. And then they get over in this case, to get over the anti-aircraft fire. All of a sudden we're 7,000 feet.
Freezing.
AGL, not sea level, AGL, hanging on the end of a rope.
Covered in sweat.
And freezing to death. And I'm looking up, and I'm swinging back and forth. So my rope is rubbing back and forth on the edge of the floor of the helicopter. Ugh. And I'm thinking, we got a long ways to go, and it's starting to fray the rope up there. And, are we going to get to a place they can set us down before that thing breaks or not? So that runs your arousal level up a little bit and, place you shivering. And then, after about 30 minutes, your legs are asleep. You can't walk because it's cut the circulation off. So even when you get to wherever they're going to set you down, you can't stand up. They have to come out and get you and pick you up and put you in the helicopter. So
it's another day at SOG,
huh? Yeah, another day at SOG.
You did a snatch mission. You mentioned in these notes. You did a little. You set up the ambush. Tried to capture someone. It doesn't seem like you mentioned a couple times you weren't very successful at capturing people.
Yeah, to get a.
Is this how you got your second nickname, Terminator?
If they don't cooperate, sometimes they get terminated. So, in this one, we had rehearsed, we had practiced, and one of the techniques of the prisoner snatch is if you have a trail that people are going to move up and down in small groups, you practice setting up an ambush that has a dead spot in it. Mm-hmm. So in the middle of the ambush usually, no one's going to fire into that zone. The claymores are angled out so that it creates a dead space there. You put a big block of C4 there that you're going to designate or detonate at the same time you set off the claymore. Everything's going to go off at the same time, and everybody's firing. And what happens is whoever's lucky enough to be standing in that dead spot, they get hit with a bullet, but the concussion from that C4 stuns them. Yeah. And, we practice. So it stuns them, and then I've got a guy with me that's designated as Thumper. All right. So he and I we're coming out of the bushes as soon as that stuff goes off. And Thumper's job is to see this guy standing there kind of dazed and just take him down. You're going to thump him in the head, and when he hits the ground, I'm going to hit him in the thigh with the morphine charrette. So I'm going to pump him full of morphine, and then he'll do whatever we say.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's just calm, and but in this case, we ended up killing that guy.
How many, at this point, you've done however many missions, had you guys taken any casualties in your teams yet?
Yes, but I took most. I mean, a lot of people got hit.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have anybody killed on one of my teams until I got to RT Virginia, and the point man was killed. A lot of people were wounded right after I left Virginia. On their next mission, they just got hammered and lost some people. The Americans got shot up really bad, both critical, so they were through with SOG.
But at this point, you're being continuing to be pretty lucky.
Yeah, and it is. People ask me all the time, well, how do you survive that? So you got to be lucky. I mean, and you can call it luck, you can call it God, you can call it whatever you want, but there's some kind of intervention that prevents you from getting hit. You can't sit in a helicopter like that first one with that many bullets crisscrossing in there and not get hit. And I, like a fraction of a second between me being hit and the other American being hit on those skids. I mean, I had just pushed back when that guy pulled the trigger, missed me, hit the other guy. And that happened on a regular basis where, when I go speak, a lot of times people, if it has this kind of flavor to it, if they say something about being in special forces or something, it's not unusual for people to come up to me and say, "I really thought you'd be taller." And I say, if I'd been taller, I'd be dead. I'm alive because I'm not taller. My head has been creased so many times, I just wouldn't be here.
Yeah. So then did Barswell took over for RT Michigan?
Yeah. Eventually we got to the point where, Barswell was ready. He could have taken over before me. Mm-hmm. But so we got to the point where I had to leave to go do something different, and I told him he's ready. Mm-hmm. He can do this.
He's a Spec 4.
Yeah.
With all those assets, all that responsibility.
And somewhere in there you got E5, I think. But yeah. But if you were to go back and look at SOG 10s across the board, you would be shocked at the age. Mm-hmm. They're so young. As I've looked at, why would people do that? And it used to be that neurologists thought that your prefrontal cortex up here, where you make decisions, but it's also the part that controls risk-taking. They used to say, it fully matures somewhere around 18 to 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And now we know most people don't mature until about 28 to 30 years old. So what's happening...
Is that primarily men? That don't men reach that level of maturity a little later?
A little bit. The women are a little behind, but in terms of the SOG leaders, most of them definitely had not matured. Uh-huh. And I don't mean that the person was immature. I'm just talking that part of the brain that controls risk-taking. So you're young. You think you're bulletproof. Mm-hmm. You think you can do anything. You think you're going to live forever. Man, this is a cool thing to do. It's a SOG mission. So I think there's something there. I just haven't had time to explore it.
Well, something there might be that the guys that are 30 years old are like, I'm not doing it. Like the guy that told you don't volunteer for SOG. Yeah. Because they're saying, the survivability's not high. I'm not going to do it. Yeah. But the young kids are
out there.
all in.
Yeah.
How old was Barswell? How old were you at this point?
Barswell, I was about 4 or 5 months older than Barswell.
And how old were you?
When Bargewell came along,
This is 1969.
So
you're 22.
22.
You were born in 47.
Just, yeah. I had just become 22, which I didn't think I would make. And I thought for sure I won't see 23. Because, I mean, we've obviously skipped over a lot of stuff here where I used a lot of cat lives up. So, but yeah, I mean, we were just a few months apart in terms of age.
Well, every single one of these operations, just about, you're going to use a certain number of cat lives.
Yes.
Did you ever go on an operation where you didn't get contacted by the enemy?
No, if you count the gas,
mm-hmm.
then no, we made contact.
100%. You're going to get into contact with the enemy. All right, what was Operation Shiloh all about? And is this why you left RT Michigan?
Yeah.
Okay. So you get called away from RT Michigan. They need somebody to do Operation Shiloh. What was that all about?
MACV SOG and somebody higher up decided that they needed to stop the influx of supplies and troops coming down from the north. And there was a place called the Mugia Pass. Big, deep valley, but there was a point where it really narrowed up. The banks were really steep and high, and so they had to funnel through that pass with their trucks and people and whatever to come on down into the south. And you send a forward air controller out there. I mean, they see it, so they pull off and they hide because they know that forward air controller has a bunch of L4s over here in orbit just waiting on him to find a target, and they're going to come in. So somebody came up with the idea of, what if we put a team out there up on the ridge, up on the crest of that valley looking down, and they'll be able to see far enough that when they're coming, they can call and say, okay, they're on their way, scramble, get the L4 out here. And the L4 can be on them like a chicken on a June bird and just eat them up, So they decided, let's do this mission. We'll sneak a team out there, put them on the ridge, let them set up there and just interdict this place like crazy. But it has to be a super team, has to be officer-led, all the Americans have to be approved by name by the president to do this because of where it is and what they're going to do. So they needed somebody, a 1-0 officer who could take over a team that we had there and lead it. And they put me on it. I wasn't happy about leaving Michigan, but I thought, well, this sounds cool. Until I learned more about what they were going to do. And I went on a visual recon. I went out and rode with a forward air controller while he was putting in airstrikes with L4s. And I'm looking at this place and I'm thinking, there's got to be somebody up there.
Yeah, it's the high ground.
They're not leaving this place undefended.
Yeah.
And when I brought that up, they said, no. There's nobody there. We never receive any fire from that area. And I said, if you don't want people to know you're there, you don't shoot at them. So I'm sure there's somebody there. And anyway, so I had some disagreements with the people down in Saigon about that. I had to go back and forth on a lot of briefings about the mission. And we took the other team, or I took the team, and we trained, and we'd go to Monkey Mountain, and we'd practice all this stuff and our surveillance techniques, and we had starlight scopes. We had long-range lenses on our cameras and all the state-of-the-art binoculars. We had a plan that said, and I thought it was funny, that we're going to drop parachutes out in an area away from there with blocks of ice in them. So the parachutes will open, descend, hang in the trees, the ice will melt. So when the NVA go over there, they'll think we parachuted some people in and they moved out.
Got it.
Because they won't see anybody. And I'm saying, they're not stupid. Anyway, so for 4 weeks we get ready to go do this thing, and then finally somebody listened and said, no, call it off. We're not going to do it. And Tilt talked to you in one of your podcasts about where he had this special mission that he had to have an officer with him.
Yeah.
Later on, after I left, it came back up again. They decided to do it, and they put an officer with his team and said, you guys are going to do it. And they were out on the helipad with the rotors turning, and when the mission got called off, because they discovered there were a bunch of people there. And if they had put either one of those teams in, I mean, we'd have lost right off the bat.
How about Dick Meadows? Now,
legend.
Now he's a legend at this time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody already knew Dick Meadows. Meadows had been. He got to the point where he'd done all this super secret stuff, and they said, "Okay, we're going to give you a choice. We can promote you to sergeant major, or we can promote you to captain. Which one do you want?" And he worked out a deal that said, if you promote me to captain, then I get to stay. You can't force me out. I get to stay in until I can retire, as an officer at whatever rank I get to.
Yeah.
So anyway, he shows.
This is, I don't know if this is the Army or if it's just Vietnam. I think it's a little bit of both. That kind of thing just doesn't happen anymore, where they take a guy like that and go, hey, we're going to either promote you to the senior enlisted side or make you a captain. Which one do you want?
Yeah.
That's epic.
Yeah. And Meadows was an epic guy.
Yeah.
I mean, so anyway, I came back from a mission, and I was told that we got a new company commander, and he wants to see you as soon as you get cleaned up. So I got in to see him that night. It was probably 2,200. And actually, the quarters it was a Quonset hut with a wall. Mm-hmm. I was on one side of it. He was on the other side. Mm-hmm. So I go over and report to him, and, he told me, good job and all this stuff. I've been looking at your record, and he said, effective right now, you're the recon company XO. I said, but I don't want to give up a team. And he said, you can keep a team. I don't care about that. But you're the XO, and you're going to help me. And he said, to start with, tomorrow morning, we're going to have a meeting with all the Americans in Recon Company, one at a time, because I've been going through the records, and I think some of them's beret has gotten a little too heavy for them. Hmm. And we're going to send them back to the train tomorrow. They don't need to be in SOG. They can go play with Special Forces, but they're not going to be in SOG. What do you mean? And he said, there are people here who are not going out on missions very often, and going out on missions, and every time they get shot off the LZ, mm-hmm. they never actually complete a mission. So, those people need to go somewhere else, and we need to replace them. Mm-hmm. And Meadows is a hard dude. Mm-hmm. I'm hard. And you can tell when he's talking to you, he is as serious as a heart attack. So he said, here, take this stack of files with you, go through them tonight, tomorrow morning at 0700, they're going to start coming in, the recon orderly room, and I'm going to have a talk. You and I are going to have a talk with them. So you tell me which ones you think need to go home. Mm. So we met in there the next morning, and I'm looking at the list that the stack he's got there that he plans to send back. I said, we're not going to have anybody left. And he said, I don't care. If we have to, you and I will lead all the missions. And my heart's not beating at this point because I'm hearing how serious he is in his voice. Mm-hmm. And he said, we'll do them all. I said, yes, sir. We're going to be kind of busy. But anyway, he wasn't going to send them all home, but he sent a lot of people back to the train that day, mm-hmm. put them He just told them, helicopter's leaving this afternoon, be on it. And he started shuttling people back down there. If you had been, dragging your feet, finding ways not to go on missions, you were sick, you were whatever, and you get shot off the LZ. I mean, he looked at, over the period of time you had been there, how many missions had you been on? How many times have you been in contact? How many days have you been on the ground? And all this kind of stuff. And, he had his own little equation, and, these people needed to find something else to do. I mean, he was hard. Big time Ranger, special ops mindset. And he started looking around right away. There's some things here we got to clean up. We should have an isolation area. When a team gets a mission, you go into isolation. That's the way it's done in Special Forces. That's the doctrine, and we're not doing it. Why would we not do that here? A lot of things like that. Training. In fact, he told me, the next morning, he said, you meet me down on the beach tomorrow morning. The beach was just right outside the Concertina. So I met him down there, and he said, we're going to go for a little run. And, he's considerably older than me at that point. So we take off down the beach at about a 7-minute pace. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, I haven't been running. I mean, I'm starting to, suck a little wind here, and this joker's not slowing down. So when we get about the 2-mile point, I told him, I said, sir, I'm gonna go ahead and turn around here and go back and take care of some things. You do that, Lieutenant. I'm gonna keep running. And he kept going, and I'd look back every once in a while till he disappeared out of sight down the beach, and he's by himself, and he's unarmed. And, later on, he came back. I mean, physical fitness was a big thing for him. You keep your body sharp, you'll keep your mind sharp. And, we started having PT in the mornings for the teams that were not out in the field, things like that. So he made a lot of changes.
How did that affect the attitude around the camp?
Well, after his house cleaning at the beginning, everybody else says, yes, sir, whatever you want. I mean, we need to do this stuff, and we need to do it right. And, he was out there. I mean, and everybody knew. I mean, he's a guy that would say, you've been out twice to get a prisoner. I'm going with you this time and show you how to get one. And he'd go out and get one and bring it back. I mean, whatever the mission was, he could do it. And then say, no, I want the rest of you to do it that way. And, oh, cow.
Roger that.
Whatever you say. So he said, you can keep a team, but here's how we're going to start. We've got a group coming over. The first group in Okinawa, we're sending people over, temporary duty. They'd send 4 teams of Americans over. And he said, I want you to train them. So when they get here, you get with them and their teams, and you put them through some training on how to run these operations and what to do. And then I want you to go out with them, with each team. You take them out. You walk right alongside, the 1-0.
I guess we call that skin in the game.
Yeah.
You're going to trade them, and then you're going to go with them.
Yeah. And, when you get a team that you think is ready to go, you tell me, we'll sign a mission to them, and you take the next team out.
Are these the snake bite teams? Is that what these are called?
Yeah,
got it.
Bites. So, I was going out on a regular basis with these guys, particularly once I got them trained. And, we were going into the Marine Force Recon's area of operations. They would put their teams out there, and within 2 or 3 days, they'd get run out. We were going out, and the objective was to stay 7 days. And excuse me, we'd eventually make contact. Sometimes we'd make contact before that, but it was a live fire, shoot back target kind of certification. So can you lead a team out against real bad guys and get shot at and do it right? And then I give them the check mark. Then they get a SOG mission. And
so those are the Elephant Valley operations?
Yeah.
Is that what those are? So you had an AO that was a little bit calmer. It was a little bit closer. You still had some real bad guys. This is just like the ultimate in training operations because it's actually real.
Yeah, because the targets shoot back. I mean, and we had several of them wounded, from going out on those missions. But, they always did a great job. I mean, when they were there, they did a great job. So he kept me busy with that. But so I was technically still going out with teams. I wasn't happy, but I said, I want real SOG missions. I don't want to,
And those did those even count as your SOG missions?
No, those are just day-to-day stuff. You go do it, and try not to get killed while you're doing it. But you just go do that. And ironically enough, that was very similar to what it was like. When I came home and went to the ranger department and became a ranger instructor. That's what I did. I was walking along, with a team of ranger students, grading and evaluating the patrol leaders. So, except the targets didn't shoot back.
Mm-hmm. But that's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
And then when did you take over RT Virginia? Was that your next 1-0?
Yeah. We finished with the snake bites, and he said, "Okay, I got one more mission for you before you get your real team back again." And he said, "We've got a team that we want to convert over to a Vietnamese-led team. So it's going to be a team that's going to operate with no Americans on it. Mm-hmm. We've got a Vietnamese Army captain that's coming in here, so he'll be the team leader. And we've got RT Virginia, who has nobody right now. So I want you to train them with him, and then you can take him out on a mission and make sure he does okay. And if he does okay, then he will take over the team, and they'll start getting SOG missions." Mm-hmm. So as soon as I got with the team, they were saying, no, we don't want a Vietnamese captain. And I don't know, there was just something about them. We bonded very quickly, and then they started saying, "We want you." I said, "It can't be me. It's got to be this guy." So we're going to go train, and they were good, and I liked them. We got along well, but they did not like the captain. So in the end, Meadows said, "Okay, you take the team. You spend all this time with them, you take them and go with them."
And then what were those missions? Then you started doing SOG missions with them? SOG
missions, yeah, because they were good.
And how many times did you go out with RT Virginia?
A bunch. I don't remember. I'd have to go back and count them now, but yeah. I mean, that was the last team, that I was 1-0 on.
And so these missions are the same, you're going deep in enemy territory, across the fence, as Tilt says, inserting and trying to do recon, trying to find intelligence, trying to plant sensors, and trying to avoid hundreds, if not thousands, of NVA.
And sometimes you went out looking for a large unit. I mean, that was the mission. You go find them, and once you find them, now you've got them located. Yep. You bring the world. I mean, you introduce them to what we call later shock and awe. I mean, you bring all this stuff on because they can't get away once you know where they are.
So some of those were just straight up patrol to contact. You're going to go in there and you're going to patrol until you find some enemy, and then you're going to call the thunder.
You go do that. And I think I had an in-country mission with Virginia, but I think the first out-of-country was what we sometimes call a suicide mission. We put in 2 teams. Mm-hmm. Once we got on the ground, we'd separate.
For you to be calling it a suicide mission is a real statement about things.
so we would separate.
This should be called the guaranteed death mission, but okay, we'll go with it. Suicide mission.
And one team would be the real team that was going to stay out there. Mm-hmm. The suicide team would be the one that was going to go make contact as soon as possible. Go find them, pounce on them. Do as much damage as you could, bring in the world, get extracted, and go away. but the other team's still out there, and nobody knows that they're out there now. They think, that was who got extracted. So, it was go get them. So we went out, and, sure enough, it didn't take us long to find, a platoon or so of people. And, so we were online, and we opened fire on them. I mean, we would normally just start out like that, but I could see them, and, and I started shooting at them, and they started shooting back. And it was funny that what happened, we were online, and as soon as all the bullets started coming back, it was swoom. They were all right here with me. And I'm what are you doing? And I said, spread out. You can't be here with me. I mean, one B-40 take us all out. And I said, so I had to smoke them a little bit until spread back out.
Dispersion is what we call that. And we'd also say don't bunch up.
Yeah.
And I would think about the psychology of what makes people bunch up like that. And part of it, I think, is just fear. And, like, you want to be next to someone else. You want to have your buddy.
Yep.
And so as soon as the bullets start flying, it's like, I'm going to go get next to you because we'll be together. And I feel better when we're together. And the other thing, I think, is just communication. People want to hear what's happening. People want to know what's happening. And so they figure, well, the boss is right there. I'll go get with the boss. Then I'll know what's happening. And then that's what everyone else on the team thinks. And the next thing you know, you're too close.
Yeah. You can't do that. They knew I had the radio.
So were you the suicide team? Were you the assault team, and then someone else was going to stay out there longer?
We were the suicide team. So we hammered that group, which grew once we started hitting them. And, then we just kept bringing in enough air power to eventually we suppressed it enough that, we could get extracted. But we'd already, we had been in contact once before the in-country mission. But yeah, I mean, that was a little issue, but we got that resolved, maintaining the dispersion and following whatever the immediate action drill was. But they were a good team. I mean, they reacted normally very well under fire.
And were those
Vietnamese?
Those were Vietnamese?
Yeah.
So with that, you wrap up with RT Virginia, and you get some R&R. And you actually have a document that you gave me about this R&R. And R&R, if you don't know, is rest and recuperation. And we're actually going to cover that on the next podcast. So thanks for coming on. And we'll fill these people in on this insane operation that is titled Rest and Recuperation. So thanks for coming out.
Well, thank you for having me.
And we'll talk to you on the next one.
Okay. Thank you.
And with that, Mr. Dick Thompson has left the building. And once again, it is an honor to be able to sit down with such incredible men and to have the opportunity to hear and to preserve their stories and their lessons. And it's actually crazy for me to be sitting here and to have this opportunity and to be able to share it with anybody that wants to hear it, anybody that wants to learn. So I am very thankful for this opportunity. And one of the things that allows us to do what we're doing here is you. Because by listening, you can take these lessons and apply them to your life and make yourself better. And if you want to help us while you make yourself better, that seems like it would be a good thing to me.
Agree.
You can help us help you.
Help us help you. Do you know what movie that's from?
Yes, I do.
What? So you feel like you know
where
it's from.
I do. I just recalled it.
All right, lay it on me.
Jerry Maguire.
Yeah. Interesting. Doesn't seem like the type of movie that you'd watch.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really seem it, but maybe it was just a movie that was so popular that at some point I watched it.
Got on the grid. Gotcha. Cool. Well, help me help you. Help me help you. That's how he said it. A little bit more dramatic. Nonetheless, yes. Help yourself. That's kind of the real deal, right? So what are we doing to help ourselves? Jiu-jitsu. Anti-stress activity. I was in the locker room.
Good point.
Not necessarily changing in the locker room, but I was talking to one of my many friends in the locker room. And when you think about it, jiu-jitsu is like the most efficient. Well, I don't know if efficient is the word, but it's like it's exercise, competition, friendly, and how should I say, what do you call it? Aggressive, but like what's like beneficial competition? You know how there's like unhealthy, we'll just say healthy competition, exercise, healthy competition. So there's social element to it. These are all things that you get out of it. Therapy, physical and mental, by the way. And
stress relief.
Which
we didn't really hit it on this initial podcast, but Dr. Henry Thompson, also known as Dick Thompson, who we just spent time with, his book is called The Stress Effect, and it talks about stress. And I concur that jiu-jitsu is a stress reliever, big time.
Yeah. It's kind of like you get small levels of stress in jiu-jitsu to the point where it doesn't feel like stress, but technically it's stress. Just positive. Like exercise, like there's stress positive in your muscle. Yeah, exactly right. So I think that's sort of how it works mentally, physically. A little bit of stress on there, and then boom, the result of that stress is no stress.
Yeah,
that's the way it goes. Anyway, when we're doing jiu-jitsu, what do we need? Gis and rash guards. That's the uniform, for lack of a better term. What kind of gis we getting?
100% origin
100% origin gis. 100%.
Yeah, making the best gis in the world.
Yeah, factually made in America.
In America.
Yeah,
from American ingredients. The masterpiece that is the gi. Yeah. Everything else too. Also, shirts and jackets and joggers. Jeans. I saw you in jeans for the first time, I think ever.
When?
I don't know. It was like we were going somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Washington. We were going to Washington. We were both representing.
Representing big time. Yeah, I look good. I felt like I look good.
I wasn't judging you on that.
Yeah. I'm not going to ask you your opinion on that matter. Nonetheless, yes, I was representing big time with my American jeans. American denim.
Yeah.
From dirt to the shirt, as they say. Nonetheless, jeans, joggers, supplements, joint warfare. I'm back on discipline. That's like 2 weeks already.
Thankful.
Like,
you know how you sometimes you slip off for whatever reason, you run out, whatever.
Yeah.
Subscription.
Yeah, I'm not.
You can get a subscription.
Yeah.
So you can get a subscription. That way you don't run out. You can go on to originmain.com and you can subscribe so that every monthly you get your resupply.
Yeah.
And that way you don't fall off the train.
Yeah,
and you save money too. It's cheaper.
Oh,
you do that.
Dang, okay.
So a little discount.
Yeah, and that's like there's certain things in life that are like that where you eat them or use them or whatever like every day. And to go on, especially if they save money, to go on those little subscriptions, that'll improve your efficiency in your life.
One less thing you have to think about.
Oh yeah, and it just comes,
and you don't get that disparaging. No, it's just not disparaging. It's just despair.
Yeah, that despair, that moment.
Yeah. It's going to be 3 days.
Yep.
Even if I FedEx it.
Yep.
They got to get the order.
Yeah, man.
No, subscribe.
Exactly right. So what supplements? Joint warfare, krill oil. These are for your joints and general health, really. Curcumin, that's general health right there.
Yeah.
Also discipline and discipline go. Finally, I got the Dak Savage.
That's Dakota Meyer's signature drink. Signature drink.
I like it. It's I haven't done a side-by-side comparison, as far as like which one I prefer, but I won't be surprised if that is my favorite one.
Oh, your new favorite.
Yes.
Because your old favorite was Tropic Thunder?
Tropic Thunder, yes. Yeah. The lemon lime was kind of too basic to be my favorite. It's still fine, still great.
Yeah. That's weird because the basic one that you're over there disparaging.
No. I'm not.
Lemon lime is my favorite at this time.
Well, you're a simple person. I get it in a good way.
My wife kind of curiously asked me, she was like, how many of these can I drink a day? because it turns out my wife is really into the discipline go.
Yeah.
So she's So anyways, I'm thinking 4 cans is around the limit per day that you want to be drinking.
I've done 3 and I'm great.
Yeah.
No, you know how, like, because like if you drink even like a coffee scenario where you get to a point where you drink too many coffees and you're like, I don't feel good anymore. I feel weird or off or what, fidgety, all these little symptoms.
I've never actually taken a complete sip of coffee in my whole life.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Dang.
I don't like the smell of it, which means I don't even have, people go, well, haven't you ever tasted it? And I'm like, well, I suppose at some point, I'm guessing I put a little sip into my mouth, but even the smell alone, I smelled it and was like, I don't like this.
Yeah. What about coffee, like flavored stuff, like ice cream?
Don't like it. Don't like coffee ice cream.
But have you tried it though?
Yes.
Okay.
But even then, sometimes there'll be some kind of special treat.
Sure.
Like some kind of wait, does tiramisu, you know what tiramisu is? Doesn't that have some coffee flavor in it?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, it seems to me. But
and
that's
you don't like it?
No, that's the only one. Tiramisu.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one dessert it's sort of like takes some skill to make.
Sure.
And if it's on the menu at a really nice restaurant, sometimes I'll have a little scenario happen where I get my tiramisu on. Partially, and this is sort of a rationalization, partially because, what I tell myself is like, well, I kind of need to see what it tastes like, because there's some tiramisu. One of the best things I've ever tasted in my life was tiramisu. It was in Canada at this little, Jeremy Stevens just got done cutting weight. We went to this, we weighed in and we went to this Italian place, homemade Italian place. And the guy, he fed us so much food. It was just, I was sick how much food we ate. And then he goes, I'm making you my tiramisu. And I said, no, I'm not. He goes, I'm making it for you. I'm going to do it. You just be quiet. So it took like 40 minutes. Mm-hmm. He like made it.
Yeah.
He brings it out. Once you've eaten a lot, you still think you can eat more. But then after like 15 minutes, you're like, no, I cannot eat more. So it was like 40 minutes. So now I'm just thinking to myself, I cannot eat anymore.
Yeah.
He brings out this tiramisu and he's like, And I forget what kind of accent he had, but he had an accent. It was either French or Italian. I think it was French. But, he just put it in front of me.
Yeah.
And I took a bite, and it was definitely one of the best things I've ever had.
Dang, that's saying a lot. Because it's one thing if like you're hungry and the first time you had it, it kind of has that impression and it imprinted in your brain. But you're like basically the worst conditions to have that experience.
That be so good.
Oh yeah, dang.
Because everything else was good too. So, anyways, maybe I need to make a tiramisu milk if that's even a thing.
But wait, is there a tiramisu like a flavor?
I don't know,
to it?
man. I got to do research.
Coffee.
I know. I got to do research.
Yeah.
See, you know what that means? Got to eat some more tiramisu.
Sure. Got to do some market.
Yeah. So speaking of milk, you can get milk. That's protein. It's another dessert which is as good as tiramisu.
Sure.
It's as good as 94% of tiramisus, because there's only 6% of tiramisus that are mind blowing. The rest of them, they're okay.
Is it because of the coffee?
I have no idea.
Maybe.
I don't have any idea what's in tiramisu. I don't even know what it is, but it tastes good in 6% situations. Yeah. Milk, 100% tastes 100%. Good.
How's this? Last night, speaking of milk, I ran out of milk. So do I just be a savage and put water in it? Because it wasn't that serious. Keep in mind, and this is literally true, I was eating steak, rice, broccoli, and that was sort of it.
Yeah.
What to drink or whatever.
Something.
Yeah, I need a little something, right? Hitter. So I figure, but here's the thing. When you're eating steak, rice, broccoli, you don't need additional protein necessarily. Unless the steak is small. I get it. But at that moment, you don't necessarily need it. I just wanted it. But I'm out of milk. So you see my conundrum, right? Yeah. Is it kind of not worth it kind of situation? But I found some, the one in the can, evaporated milk. You know that thing? You ever tasted that before?
Yeah.
Bro, it doesn't taste good.
Yeah.
It tastes pretty whack, actually. But you put it in the milk, it makes it like more creamy. Oh, it was good. It was surprisingly good. Yeah. So it was like a same deal. The dessert, a little bit extra creamy. I put some peanut butter in it too. It was a dark chocolate one. Yeah. So yes, milk. You are correct, 100%.
B Little. I was talking to B Little the other day, and I said, I've only actually had the darkness milk a couple times.
You have?
Yes. And he said, you got to try it again. It's really good. Yeah. And so I went home and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have the darkness.
Oh yeah.
It's good.
Oh yeah,
man.
that's my main jam right now.
Oh really?
The darkness, yeah.
Yeah. So I've kind of disparaged that flavor a bit of milk. I've been like, well, everything else is so great, and then there's chocolate, the darkness. Yeah. Now I'm sort of thinking I underestimated the quality and the taste of the darkness. Yeah. Okay, so you get milk. You can also get strawberry milk and chocolate milk for your kids, Warrior Kid milk, so that they're healthy.
For the strawberry one, I'm not saying do this, but do this. Just try it. How about this? Just try it. Add a half a banana in it. Okay. Just do that. Report back.
Did I tell you my daughter the other day, she's in college, and she sent me a Snapchat. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you're on Snapchat. All good, dude.
Yeah, well,
man.
That's closed scenario with the fam.
Oh,
right?
closed circuit. I got you.
And anyways, because she's a 18-year-old girl, she sent me a snap of her of her shake, and it said you could just know exactly what it said. It said literally a peanut butter chocolate milkshake. That was the text written.
Oh yeah. Literally.
And then she called me because I don't really check Snap that often.
Of course
and
not.
I don't think I've got it live for notifications. But then she said, she sent me a text. Check your Snap. And I said, why? What, is everything okay? She's like, I literally just made the best. It's literally so anyways.
I think it's complete hilarity. Not 99%, 100% hilarity. How witnessing secondhand, by the way, you navigate your way through the current trends of 18-year-old Snapchat lingo scenarios. It's very funny to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only one, by the way.
Check.
Also, Jocko white tea.
Yes.
Let's not forget about the Jocko white tea.
So good.
Once you kind of deadlift all that weight or whatever, we tend to forget where, how you got there. Yeah. So let's just not forget that.
Yeah. And plus, winter is here, kind of.
Sure.
So,
kind of fall-ish.
Yeah, fall-ish. But what that means is warm drinks. There's two drinks to drink warm. Milk warm.
Sure.
Like chocolate milk warm.
The Warrior Kid milk is better warm.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I did that experiment. It was a while ago, right when the Warrior Kid came out. It's better warm.
Or you can drink Jocko white tea warm. Right. It's good.
If you haven't been already.
Yeah.
Yes, you can get all these amazing. I shouldn't say amazing. Amazing is one of those words that it started off as a joke because people would say, "Oh my gosh, amazing!" But Brad, you're not amazed by this. Just say good or whatever. Nonetheless, that was a joke, so I'd say it as a joke, mocking everyone.
But now you're serious.
Yeah, you know how it rolls into your normal lingo after a while.
Oh yeah.
It did that. Anyway, these items to keep you on the path, help yourself, help others, all that. OriginMain.com. That's where you get them. Also, Jocko has a store. It's called Jocko Store. So you go to JockoStore.com. What can you get there?
Rash guards.
Rash guards. This is like representative of the path. You're on the path. You represent on the path. The kind like if people know, if you listen and you see somebody representing in the wild, right? They're on the path 100%.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Even at the gym, I'll see people wearing the rash guard.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of people wearing the rash guard here at our gym.
Yes, sir.
Victory MMA. And fitness.
Oh yeah, and to me that tells me 100% like that person's on the path.
When I see somebody that's wearing, that's representing,
big time,
I just give them a little head nod.
A little something, yes sir. Me too. Yeah,
because it's not acknowledgement, it's unification, right?
Yes,
it's like I'm with you.
Yep,
we're together.
Oh yeah,
we're in this fight.
Oh yeah, I feel it too, man. And I think that's a common thing, like I'm sure Pete could tell you too, like if he was at the post office or wherever and he sees like somebody with some Origin boots on or something like this, he just kind of look at the boots and be like, yeah man, 100%.
If you listen, t-shirts, truckers hats, beanies, hoodies. What else?
Good stuff. Yep. Decals on there. We replaced some stuff. Yeah, it's just go JockoStore.com if you like something. Hey man, get something. Represent. Good spot.
Yeah. Don't forget about this podcast if you want to listen to it and when you want to know when it comes out, then you can subscribe to this podcast wherever you subscribe to podcasts, which is a good call because Echo doesn't think you've subscribed to it yet.
I factually don't think that.
Okay.
There you go. I think
So
I
we don't
agree with
need
you.
to say it anymore?
No, well, you know,
There you
I
go,
think
'cause you
it's
don't think people subscribed.
it's a cool reminder.
Trapped. You just
It's
got trapped.
It's a cool reminder for sure. Yes, wherever you listen to podcasts, yes, subscribe if you would, if you want, fully. Also, speaking of subscribing, there's another podcast that people seem to like called Grounded. Keeps you grounded. Kind of jujitsu a theme. It's not really a jiu-jitsu thing. It kind of is. It's just more exploring certain elements of life in a little bit more loose way.
I guess, yeah, that's a good way of talking about it.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a little bit more mellow version of the Jocko podcast. That
Yes.
we can just kind of talk about stuff.
But when you listen to it, like, it kind of feels like the feeling, right? Because you have a certain experience when you listen to podcasts. The feeling you get, because I listen to it.
I don't get feelings, but go ahead.
We get feeling. It's kind of like, okay, a conversation's going on about a certain thing, and you kind of want to chime in more. Like, that's how I feel. You know, like when I listen to it. It's like a conversation's going on kind of with you. It's what it feels like. I don't know. That was one of my prelim experiences with it. Nonetheless, called Grounded Podcast. Same deal on iTunes, Google Play, all that stuff. Also, the Warrior Kid podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget about that one for the young ones. And
Don't forget about that one. And we have 2 in the bank. I got 1 more to prep, and we'll get another 3 Warrior Kid podcasts out there. So working it. And then don't forget about the Warrior Kid soap from IrishOaksRanch.com. If you're going to support a Warrior Kid, it's a good way to do it. He's running a business at age 13. No big deal.
Yeah, with legitimate products, by the way. Because it's one thing, again, I said this before, like, you know how your friend or your neighbor, whoever, they give you the soap wrapped in the little decorative plastics and ribbons. You know that soap?
Not really, but continue.
Well, they'll do it from time to time. And they're like, hey, here's your gift item, soap. It's like, cool.
That's a hint.
But you would think, but it's not real soap. It's real soap technically, but like you use it and you're like, bro, this isn't for use. This is like a decorative piece.
Got it.
You put on the sink, on the side or something like that. It's like that's what it is. But
like
this one
shaped like a Claymore mine or something. To kind of get you in the game.
should be. Usually it's shaped like a turtle shell or like a, raindrop. I don't know.
Abrams tank.
Typically, no. Nonetheless, just Jocko soap, the one that Aiden makes, is like good. It's soap. Like you use it. You're supposed to use it.
It's not a wall hanger.
It's not a wall hanger. It's not a decorative piece.
Got it.
It's functional, as you say.
It'll help you stay clean.
Boom. Also, YouTube channel if you're interested in the video version of this podcast. If you have a smart TV, like hanging in your wall in your gym. Or in your house, whatever, office, whatever, you want to play this podcast, boom, put on the YouTube version. I say that because I hear that people are doing that.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying?
I've seen videos of people doing that.
Me too.
Which is pretty cool. And plus, you can see Echo's videos that it's up for debate whether he goes overboard or not. I think some that's clearly that it has gone overboard.
I think they're like what do you call?
Borderline? Pushing the envelope?
Oh, man. I say the perfect amount of modulation with fire, explosions, sound effects.
And cello.
Yes.
Yeah, check that out. We also got Psychological Warfare. If you need a little mental support, that's me giving it to you through your MP3 platform. Then there's FlipsideCanvas.com. This is visual support run by my brother Dakota Meyer, who's making graphic art representation of the path. Cool stuff. Check that out, FlipsideCanvas.com. Okay, we got some books. Number 1, The Stress Effect. Look, we got 2 more podcasts with Dick Thompson. He wrote a book. We'll cover it in the 3rd podcast, but it's called The Stress Effect. If you want to get ahead, you can order it now. We've got it listed on the website. Why Smart Leaders Make Dumb Decisions and What to Do About It. The Stress Effect. So check that out. Of course, we also have Leadership Strategy and Tactics, which is my new book coming out January 14th. I was flipping through the index. It's a heavily indexed book so that you can quickly find what you're looking for, but it's pretty cool when you are looking through the index. Here's some things: communication with bosses, forms of complaints, complex problems, compromise, condescension, confidence, construction sites, contingency planning, counseling, countenance. It's got some very interesting topics all about leadership. Check that one out. Then, of course, there are the Warrior Kid books 1, 2, and 3 to get kids on the path. We got Mikey and the Dragons for the littler kid. Teach that kid to overcome fear. We have the Discipline Equals Freedom field manual, the first field manual about how to be on the path. If you want to know about workouts, there's a bunch of workouts in there for you. If you want to know about martial arts, there's a bunch about martial arts in there. If you want to know about food, it's in there. Sleep, it's in there. All that stuff's in there. And then there is the thoughts from me. And then there's Extreme Ownership and The Dichotomy of Leadership. These are the 2 leadership books that I wrote with my brother Leif Babin. And if you need help with your leadership, you can check those out. There's also Echelon Front. This is our leadership consultancy, and what we do is solve problems through leadership. Go to echelonfront.com for that. If you want to get some of that training online, check out EF Online. You don't need someone from Echelon Front to show up at your business to give you the instruction. You can get it from EF Online. Online training, interactive online training. Then we have the muster. The next muster is in Sydney, Australia, which is happening now. This is probably already done. So look at extremeownership.com for details of the forthcoming musters in 2020. And then we have EF Overwatch and EF Legion. This is where we are taking folks from the military and placing them into civilian companies that need leadership. And if you want to continue to hear from us, then you can interact with us on the interwebs. Dick Thompson is on Twitter, by the way. He is at HPS_CEO. And he also has a website, HPSys.com. That's High Performance Systems. That's his company. So if you want to check out or you want to interact with Dick Thompson, incredible human being, check him out. And then also, we are on Twitter as well. We are on Instagram, and we are on ye old Facebook. Echo is at Echo Charles, and I am at Jocko Willington. Thanks once again to Dr. Henry Dick Thompson for sharing his wisdom on this program today. And more important, thanks to Colonel Thompson for his service and sacrifice to protect freedom and democracy around the world for his whole career. And thanks to the rest of our military men and women that are out there today doing the same for us now. And to all the police and law enforcement and firefighters and paramedics and EMTs and dispatchers and correctional officers and Border Patrol, Secret Service, and all first responders, thank you for protecting us here on the home front. And to everyone else out there, we all want to do better. Everybody wants to be better. Everyone talks about becoming better. But I'll tell you right now, it doesn't just happen. In fact, it will not happen on its own. It will not happen on its own. You have to make it happen. You have to lead yourself. You have to make yourself better by attacking every day in spite of whatever challenges you face every day. Go out there and get after it. And until next time, this is Echo and Jocko out.